To quote Charlie Austin, plenty of points to play for and goals to be scored. 30 points to be precise. That would, based on final 2022 standings, pop Town snugly into the playoffs. Naturally, that would require a remarkable Rovers-esque run between now and the end of the season. Slim to no chance is the fans' take on that if the recent Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge poll is anything to go by. But this is Swindon Town, and our roller coaster often defies logic. So how and why has this season gone so savagely squiffy in the eyes of fellow Town fans, and, if management's stated ambition of promotion is to be believed, those running the club? Well, later we're going to be taking your calls and debating your opinions. So get involved in the big Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge debate tonight. DM us, send us a tweet, or hit a speaker request. We're also going to be reviewing an 8-goal debacle in Greater Manchester, 4-star Charlie Austin and all. But first up, we are delighted to welcome Swindon Town first team management duo of Keelan and making his Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge show debut, James Lally. How are you, gentlemen? Good evening.
Yeah, evening, Hannes.
How are you, James? Welcome to the show, buddy. It's your debut. How's it feel?
Yes, yeah, it feels good. I've had to listen to Annie and Lane's for enough weeks now, so.
Well, listen, it wouldn't be the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, James Lally, without us making life just a little bit squiffy for you, indeed. It's not just going to be us putting the questions to you tonight. It's going to be the wonderful Annie Colston. How are we, Annie?
Hello, I'm very good, thank you. How are you, Lally?
Yeah, I'm good, Annie.
Lally smells an ambush. Keelan, good evening. How are you?
Hey, mate, you're right. Hello, Annie. How was I not surprised?
Tardiness. So, yes, Keelan, do you smell an ambush? Because Annie's on. I've also got Charlie Rowlands. How are we, Charlie?
Hello, everybody.
Ambush.
I will say now, I was surprised that Jenny Gray had signed back up to Twitter, so I'm not surprised to see her as a speaker tonight either.
Well, whilst we're on the subject of the wonderful Jen Gray, how are we, Jen? Welcome to the show.
Hello. How is everyone?
All the better for hearing you making your show debut, and all the better for this shameless setup of your management duo. And last, but very much not least, the one that is going to really strike fear into Keelan and Lally's heart, the skipper herself. How are we, Alice?
It's me. I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh, yeah, really good. Really good. We're locked and loaded, ladies, aren't we?
We're ready to go.
And joining me on Quizmaster extraordinaires, we've got Chris Kay making his big comeback. How are we, Chris?
Hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not so bad, mate. Not so bad. We're scaling the heady editorial heights. Tonight's going to be a bit of you, pal. A bit of you.
Absolutely.
Co-host extraordinaire Joe. How are we, Joe? Oh, he's not listening, is he? Joe, are you listening? If you're not, jump out of the show, get back in because your text's letting you down again. Whilst he's doing that, Chris, how are we?
We're all good up here in the north.
Up here in the north. Well, you're very welcome as always, Chris. You are very welcome. Joe, you're back on. Are you working?
I am, mate, yeah. I was like bouncing. My mute button wasn't like turning off. It was just bouncing on and off. But as we've got people to ask questions tonight, I'm not really needed, am I? So we can sit back and just enjoy.
Well, we can, can't we? We've created some chaos tonight, and we've created chaos. So poor old James, he was expecting straight down the middle. Nice, easy, bit of a debut run. And we thought, we can't do that. We can't do that. So the four ladies that have joined us tonight, they've got all the dirt on these two characters. So we're really going to get our listeners under the hood of our wonderful management duo of KP and James. Are you ready, gentlemen?
Yeah, I just before we get going, just to remind them that the team hasn't been selected for Sunday yet. So
That's a cheap shot, Lally. That's a cheap shot.
I'm unavailable anyway, so I feel like I can ask what I like.
Go on, Charlie.
Oh, there you go. Shots fired. Shots fired. Well, listen, the first question is me, and it's to both of you. So we both need you to tell us an interesting fact about yourselves. Who wants to go first?
We'll be here all night trying to think of something interesting with these two.
Oh, wow.
I'm loving this already. I'm loving it.
Getting dropped.
I'm more interested to see what the girls think an interesting fact about us would be, but
yeah, well, we could come on to that. We can come on to that, KP.
Stop trying
come
to
on, see
avoid
as you
the
pipes up,
question.
KP.
Maybe how nights out end, KP.
yeah.
Right, now you've got me rubbing my hands in glee. Let's hear it, KP. Interesting facts about you.
Yeah, so I'm a bit older now, so I don't go out as often, but I think the last 2 nights I've been out, I've been arrested for drunk and disorderly. I will say I've been de-arrested both times.
Somehow you got de-arrested. You nearly. Oh my goodness! Let's not go into this.
My wife. The first time I was the best man on a stag do in Cardiff. So I was the one meant to be the nice one and looking after everyone else. And the second time was post county ground game. Actually, we went out in Old Town. I think I'm banned from drinking by Lally, so I don't think that'll be happening again in future.
And the whole team.
We'd just like
designated driver.
We would just like to stress you were de-arrested, so clearly no laws were broken.
Yeah, and obviously, Hannah, as you'll know, my role, my job, that's obviously a big thing as well. So I had to be very careful.
Yeah, yes, indeed, and no doubt you were. Well, look, moving along swiftly. How about you, James? Tell us an interesting fact.
You're not allowed to talk about science, Lally.
Yeah, I was going to say, given that no one wants to go on a desert island with me, I'm not too sure what to go for. Slightly tenuous link, but football related at least. My stepdad's kind of great uncle, Cliff Bastin, that was who Ian Wright and Thierry Henry broke the records of.
Football Arsenal royalty, no less. Look at Keelan hitting the heart buttons. More of that to come, Keelan. But that's fascinating, James. So hang on, what's Cliff Bastin's relation to you? Did you say great uncle?
No, it's more tenuous than that. It's my stepdad's great uncle.
That is absolutely outstanding. Cliff Bastin, how about that? But yeah, so I do remember Ian Wright pulling the shirt up over his head a goal too early with the when he broke the Cliff Bastin record. For those of us that are a little bit older in years, such as myself. And Keelan, no doubt you'll remember that as well. But Cliff Bastin, blimey. No, that's impressive, James. Impressive. You've undersold that, knowingly undersold that. What we got next? Joe, you're up, pal.
I am, yeah. So this one's for both of you as well. So as a management team, is it true you cancelled Sunday's game against Moneyfields because you knew you were coming on the lounge and you didn't want the smoke?
Yeah, I think Moneyfields retreated us. Frustratingly, the game was postponed. Yeah.
No, it was all you clearly needed time to prepare for especially James. He wanted a lot of time to prepare for his big lounge debut. That's what we reckon.
Yeah, I didn't prepare for this though.
Don't think you could have prepared for this, James. Don't think you could have prepared. Hey, listen, we like to make an effort for our guests, and there's no way you're going to come on and just sit back with your pipe and your slippers and ease your way into the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. This is like your barman's initiation, James, tonight. So we're going to give the listeners their money's worth. Chris, you're up next.
This is one for James. Can you describe the unluckiest match you've ever been involved in?
Yeah, I think I'd probably say it was one when I was managing the development team a couple of seasons ago against Charlie's old team, Forest Green. I think we had 20 odd shots on target that day. They had 2 and they ended up beating us 2-0. So yeah, it's probably that. Did Charlie score? I don't know if Charlie was there at that time. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
And in terms of unlucky, what was the post match food like? Were they kind of like stuffing you with veggies then as well, or?
We were at home and we don't have to provide food in that league, so there was none.
There we are. Alice, here we go then. Put the guys on the rack.
I bet they're shaking in their boots.
This is actually
This
is quite tame for you, Alice. Actually, this question.
I know I am a tame person. I just pretend.
Oh, country smells.
Which male footballer do you most admire and why? And obviously, if you're going to talk about me, you don't have to make it long.
Which female footballer do you most admire and why? And that's to both of you. So either of you can jump in on this one.
Jill Scott was always one of my favourite female footballers.
Potty mouth.
Yeah, and obviously she kind of came to like everyone's kind of attention in the World Cup, and then the kind of stuff she's done afterwards. So yeah.
What was it about Jill that sort of caught your eye, James? I mean, obviously she's a specimen, right? What is she? Is she about 6'4", 6'5"?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not too sure, but obviously just kind of almost the Crouch equivalent in terms of kind of stature and stuff in the women's game. But technically, I thought she was great.
Yeah, obviously ferocious competitor as well. As she showed in her final appearance for the Lionesses. How about you, KP?
I'm gonna have to say Beth England, which pains me because she's gone to Spurs. But we had a centre forward a couple of years back at Swindon Town. I asked her a person that she had admired as a centre forward, and she said Beth England. So I was trying to find some clips of her, and the more I watched of her, the more I thought actually she's a fascinating player. The way she strikes the ball, the way she moves around as a centre forward. I play defence, so what a striker does, and I talk about a proper striker, not these tap-in strikers. It was a bit fascinating to watch her and see how she moves around the pitch. Seeing my centre forwards at the moment laughing their heads off. Just the way she moves around the pitch and the way she strikes the ball, which pains me now because I then see why she left Chelsea and she's gone to Spurs. And as an Arsenal fan, that does pain me.
So Tottenham's Beth England for KP and Jill Scott freshly retired for you, Lally. The thing that impressed me about Jill Scott as well, Lally, is she's got she owns a coffee shop, right? Would you accept a flat white?
I don't drink coffee, never have. So.
Oh, that's something we're going to have to remedy. Come on. You're talking to the coffee meister, James. The coffee meister. Splice me open and I literally bleed coffee beans. So we'll have to fix that up.
And he has about 100 cups to drink coffee out of.
Yeah, I've got one or two. Right, what we got next? Who's up next? We've got
me, mate.
It is Chris. Fire
it
away.
Is me. You're going from the coffee meister to the tea meister here. So
here we go.
We'll see how it goes. I'm going to slightly subvert this question, guys, because I think we can make this kind of a bit interesting. The question is inspire us in under 60 seconds, but I'm going to suggest you're 3-0 down at half time. Now inspire the team. How would you do it?
Oh, nice. We've got them on the ropes here, Chris.
I know. They're having to think about this one, aren't they? How do we do it?
This is what you get for subverting the question.
I know.
They let Alice Bowden do the talking instead.
Maybe we should. Well, maybe we should let Alice do the talking here then. Come on, inspire us, Alice.
Alice, remember you're after the watershed, so please feel free. Let go.
That's all right. To be fair, I am an inspirational person. What can I say? But I think sometimes just a little kick up the arse for the girls, a little bit of shouting and swearing, and they're ready to go.
Could you almost like? Could you kind of? I wouldn't expect verbatim, but your last performance, Alice, along similar lines. Can you tell us what you said?
Don't go full Mike Bassett on us here.
No, I won't. Last time that happened, well, we won't talk about that, will we, Lally? But no, I can't even remember. I think sometimes the girls, they're amazing, and just the way that they can play. Sometimes I just have to remind them how we play, and sometimes I'm like, let's just fucking kick their asses. Let's just make them look fucking stupid. That's all it takes.
I don't know if you were there, Bowser, last year, but the Larkall game when we was home, I think. This is one that springs to mind, and ironically, it wasn't me with the inspiration. We were at home. The manager last season, I think, it was in Sweden, getting ready to leave and go, and we were 2-1 down, I think, at home.
Yes. Great comeback, that though.
I'd subbed off Ree, who's the captain at the time. I think it was the first sub she'd had all season as well, which was obviously controversial. And I think it was a break in play. And I remember calling the girls over. And before I even got a chance to say anything, I'm getting busted out of the way by Ree. And she's giving it the big licks, all the players going, this is not good enough, not acceptable, with a few more harsh words than that. But yeah, I don't know, James, what do you think? I think we're a bit chalk and cheese. I go probably a bit more vocal. I wouldn't say I swear too much, but I look for the reactions. But
well, Ethan seems to be saying you would. I don't want to quote him directly, but well, we're after the watershed, so maybe I could. But Ethan's sort of denying that you wouldn't be swearing. Let's just put it politely, Keelan.
Yeah.
Right then. Is there anything you'd like to layer into that, James? So I think Bowd's given us an interesting insight into the dressing room and whatnot. What's the head coach's sort of take? You're 3-0 down. You've got to get a rise out of them. Appreciate it's probably based on circumstance, but where's your heart taking you?
Yeah, like you said, it is really circumstantial. And when you've got players like Bowd and Reed that can do some of that for you, then I use them wherever I can, really. If I think they're going to be more effective than me. I think Reed did another one at the start of the season, the Larkall game. By the time we got in there in the changing room, she'd already had words with them. I think similar with Bowd. So like we want leaders in the team for that reason. And if they're going to kick them up the ass, my job is more about some of the more kind of tactical tweaks and just reminding them of game plan stuff more so than me bollocking them.
Yeah.
So basically, just let Bowds and Marie have a fight outside the changing room for like 5 minutes, then send them in. Sorted.
Yeah, scarred and bloodied.
Yeah.
I think so. You've got to gauge the room. I think sometimes you've got you can tell when they're down and they need an arm around their shoulder. And then, like Bowd said before, sometimes you need to go in there and just put a rocket up their backside. So I think the first thing is gauging. So hopefully we've got that right more than wrong most times. If we don't get it right, the girls let us know anyway, usually. So there's no comeback to that anyway.
Or you can send Charlie in to cut everyone's ponytail off.
I mean, listen, I'm interested in getting both your thoughts, KP and James, and obviously, ladies, feel free to pitch in. But a lot's been said about clearly in the men's game, like the generational change in terms of old school managers being able to sort of manage players by fear, stick as opposed to the carrot and such like. And then you've got the new school managers that are, far more kind of consultative, far more sort of bought in. Like certainly, James, along the lines of what you've just described there, like being a little bit more cerebral in their approach. Do you feel that is exactly the same with the women's game, given the sort of rapid progression the women's game's enjoyed over the last couple of years in particular? Or is there any kind of key differences in terms of that sort of motivational approach? I'll put that to either of you.
It's hard for me to talk about the women's game too much because it's mainly kind of these group of players that I've worked with for the last 4 years. So, but I think just dealing with people in general, there's only so long fear and ruling by stick there's only so far that can get you, or only so long it can last before people just get turned off by it. Especially like the start of the season, in the last few years, our girls have been paying to play for us. So you start screaming and shouting at people and ruling by fear. What are you going to pay? Why are you going to pay for that?
That's a great shout, actually, isn't it? That it's like I don't want to refer it to it and like any kind of volunteer force, but you can't, as you say, you can't start getting into people's faces because why would people buy stress, right? So yeah, interesting take. I mean, ladies, is there anything that you would add from a kind of playing side to that as well? Because I know you've spoken to me about certain teams that you've played against over the last couple of years where they've been unbelievably aggressive, unbelievably physical. What from a kind of management perspective, sort of then reflecting onto you guys, is there anything you'd layer in on that?
I think sometimes the aggressiveness isn't from the managerial side. I think I've been here a long time, and I've had a fair few managers, and only some managers have managed to get it right. The way that you manage women to men is 10 times different to each other. With women, you have to be a little bit more patient. I know it sounds stupid, but take their feelings on board. Like, we are women, we can be hormonal, we can be quite rash. And I think some men that have managed us haven't understood that task. So we had a manager before, and my husband actually played under him and said, yeah, he's absolutely mental Alice. He's had people up in the changing rooms, like fist fighting, throwing boots at him. But he was the nicest person, one of the nicest managers I've ever had here. Lovely. Never shouted at anyone. But a lot of the aggression is from the girls. Like, I'll put my hands up. I'm quite an aggressive player. And that doesn't come from like KP or James saying anything to me. That's just me as a person. And I think it's how you manage yourself is a massive part of women's football, rather than the managers managing every single person, because trying to manage 11 different women is quite hard, as you can probably imagine. If you've got a wife, daughter, sister, trying to manage one person is quite difficult, so let alone 11.
Do you I don't want to use the term sort of political correctness, Alice, and I certainly don't want to try and dig myself a hole here, but you've really surprised me with your kind of just the very upfront nature about, you know, describing the differences between female players, male players. This is an area where some male football fans have found it very, very difficult to kind of find their way into legitimately following women's football. You know, like, it's a little bit like, well, we're all players out on the pitch here. You should just follow it and appreciate the game for what it is, would be some people's response to that. But you've just completely sort of, you know, directly impacted on the fact that, hang on a second, like, you know, I don't want to go down the men are from Mars, women are from Venus kind of route, but you get where I'm coming from. You've kind of pretty much tackled that head on.
Yeah, I just think it's the way I've sort of always been around football since I was young. I've always had like jobs I used to work for Arsenal with men and Swindon Town football in the community. So I've always been around men, like footballers, and the way that they perceive the women's game. And like, me and my family and my friends were quite open, and we all generally have discussions quite a lot of the time. And a few of my friends have said the same thing, that they enjoy to watch the women's game, but they find it difficult to interact with it because they're not sure how to do it. So I think like you guys on the podcast, like showing who we are, what we're about, I think that really opens up for a lot of people to understand, like, we are just normal people. Like, we are just like, well, not like blokes, but do you know what I mean? Like, we have like stupid banter like that. We're not like absolute weirdos, like that just love football. We are human beings.
So, I mean, you know, Annie, you'll remember before the Plymouth game, you guys came and sat with us for a little while in the Legends Lounge. And I mean, I would very clearly say, I mean, Joe, you might want to chip in on this. The vibe that day in the Legends Lounge is very, very different. I mean, still busy, wasn't it, that day in the Legends Lounge? But it was a very, very different vibe. We remarked on it being a little bit more family orientated, but I kind of got the feeling that there were some people sort of feeling their way into the supporting experience in a way that they don't necessarily do on a Saturday when the men are at home. And I guess that's what Alice is saying, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we said at the time, like, you know, the Legends Lounge usually on a Saturday is blokes the age of 30 to 50 get sort of like 10 pints in before the football starts, and it's, you know, it's a bit rowdy, a bit sweary. I think the difference was it was a lot of, you know, dads and their daughters, which was really nice to see. And that, I think the games at the county ground are so important because it opens up the women's game and the women's team at Swindon to a real mainstream audience. It's just, I said weeks ago that, you know, the WSL being on Sky Sports is massive for the football, the women's football, because it gets it on our tellies every Saturday. It gets us on Sky Sports News with the highlights, and it's out in your face all the time. One thing I would say as well, just going back to the difference in managing men's football and women's football that Alice was speaking about, it's interesting, isn't it? Every time Swindon have got a managerial post vacancy, you always see the likes of your Emma Hayes and your, you know, Hope Powell in the betting odds. It's never happened, but I'd be really interested to see what these like super successful women's managers would be like in the men's game, just as like an interesting experiment, if you like, just see how it translates.
Yeah, I mean, Emma Hayes has become, I wouldn't say perpetually linked, but she's always a name that comes up.
She's like the Guardiola of the women's game, isn't she? I think genuinely, and also you say about you need to have maybe a different approach in sort of aggression and mentality and stuff. Emma Hayes scares me, like genuinely scares me. I think she would give people a bollocking no problem.
I know what you mean.
Emma Hayes is
right? She has got those eyes.
Emma Hayes, don't forget as well, is unique in that sense. She's been managing for like nearly 15, 20 years. So like when I was going to come back to a point before where Bowser's raised that point, there was I think it was a Northern Irish manager, international manager, and he talked about women being more emotional on the pitch and stuff like that, and he got hounded for it. But his players came out and defended him and said, "Look, we are a little bit more emotional. Maybe he should have said it publicly, but he got hounded for it." Yeah.
I mean, KP, to your point, I mean, we're spending a lot of time on this particular question because it's opened a bit of a can of worms, but I wouldn't have felt confident raising that topic in the way that Alice did. It almost feels like it's not my place to say it. In and around discussing the women's game. So it's interesting. I would imagine there's going to be an awful lot of male football fans that are tuning into the show tonight or listening to the recorded version that would have raised an eyebrow at that suggestion. And I wonder how many kind of males would feel comfortable enough, even having listened to Alice articulate that so well, whether they would feel comfortable enough to be able to talk about that in a Legends Lounge environment for fear of being dragged over the coals for saying it. Interesting. We won't pull for any more comment on that. But Jen, so welcome to the show, Jen.
Hello.
Here we go. You've got a cracker of a question locked and loaded for both of our gentlemen here.
Yeah. So I just want to know from both of you, at your time at Swindon Town, what's been your most satisfying result? When have you felt the best after a game, boys? KP, I'm looking at you as well. For there's a few I can remember in our last 3 years that have been pretty big corkers.
Do you know what, mate? I think it's going to be the season I actually weren't coaching you, which is hard to say. But I think obviously the first season I came back, the 1920 season, got COVID hit, and then the year after we set some good foundations that year. Obviously James joined that summer as well. The club, if we're honest, wasn't in a great place on the pitch or off the pitch. And obviously I had to move because of the military, but I stayed in touch. And I came back to watch you girls. I think you played, I think it was Cheltenham at home.
Yeah.
I think it was midweek game, and I think you won 4-2. And honestly, I think the shithousery in that game, at the end of the game, was brilliant to see because the season before was strong. I think we won one game. So learning how to win a game and then putting that into action was brilliant to see. And it was more so because I came as a fan. I weren't coaching you. I didn't really see what you were doing on a training session. But it was some foundations we put in the year before. So I think that's probably one of the most satisfying in my 5 years with you girls.
KP, that's actually the one that was in my mind as well. It was actually my first 90 minutes for the club, actually.
Yeah, it was a class game. I remember again, I think there was a throw in on the right-hand side, right by the dugout, and she goes to throw the ball at the player and she just throws it away. There's 2 minutes left to go. And I was just loving it on the sidelines. And there's a local rival, Cheltenham, at the time. So,
massive rivals. Lally, what about you?
From this season, I'd probably say the first Larkhall game.
Yeah.
Team that we needed to beat this season, that we kind of set our sights on, that we had to be finishing above, to go 1-0 down in not a great way, and then the comeback that we did after that, as well as the kind of time wasting and stuff that followed, to see the game out. And it's probably that.
If anyone hasn't seen the pictures and video of Annie's celebration from that game-winning goal, I suggest you go and find them, because that will show you just how.
Well, come on, please describe.
I don't think you need to find it. It was posted all over Twitter for about
that will show you what it meant to everyone.
So here's a question for you collectively. Poulton earlier in the season, the first double header that you've ever had at the county ground. I appreciate the game the scoreline was an absolute mauling, but you had a record crowd. How important was that game in terms of the overriding sort of supporter psyche and attitudes towards the women's football club, do you feel?
I mean, I think personally, I think it was massive. Playing senior women's football for nearly 12 years now, it's only in the last couple of years that teams of our sort of national league level have started to see those kind of crowds. And just having so many families and young kids there to watch it was just massive. And I think we're just continuing to see more and more support come through for the club.
How did that feel for you, Jen, as someone that's got so much experience under your belt? What was that like, stepping out of the county ground in front of that sort of scale of crowd?
You know what? It actually felt fantastic. You know, back 10 years ago, I never would have even pictured sort of games like that with crowds like that. So seeing it now is really great, and it's just such a good future for the young players coming in. If that's what we're doing now, what are they going to be doing in 10 years when they're in the position that you know, they're in the position I was 10 years ago? What are they going to be doing then? It's going to be huge. So yeah, it's great.
I think that was the key for me, Jen, actually. I mean, it was a bit of a loaded question, what I've asked about Paulson, but it really felt like, I mean, certainly for me, it was that as like the atmosphere, the vibe amongst the crowd, the performance that you ladies put on, the quality of goals that you scored. I mean, you can only beat what's in front of you, and you're really put them to the sword. And that was the thing. And you didn't take your foot off the pedal either. Like there are some games where you could see, I mean, you take the men's team on Saturday, 2-0 up after 15 minutes. For me, at that point, I was like, look, we could put this lot to the sword here. You just got to keep going and going. And that night, you guys were just relentless. Like, you just didn't take your foot. It's like you were intent on putting a show on for the crowd. And that key word that it's that key word progression, isn't it? Just sort of, again, Jem, for someone that's been part of the fabric of the football club for such a long time, that's a wonderful sort of selling point, isn't it? Like, to be able to say, look, we had this experience too. Whether that's a prospective player or a player you want to hold on to.
Yeah.
As you said, we weren't doing this 5-6 years ago.
Yeah,
it's a big step forward, wasn't it?
It's absolutely amazing, and it's just putting down great foundations for the future, you know, to move forward and keep progressing. So, yeah, it's great.
Super.
I'm just going to do a little dirty plug here. We have just retweeted our stuff tonight, but we have got a game of the county ground next Sunday as well, just to plug that a little bit.
Hold on, Keelan. Hold on. Keep your powder dry. I'm not going to let you down.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you
He's
down.
invited KP tonight.
Cat is out the bag.
That's it. Script out the window. He set fire to the old bloody thing. But listen, I don't know whether did we get an answer from you, James, in its entirety? Are you happy with that?
On the county ground?
Yeah. Did you have any thoughts of like how important Paulton was?
Yeah, it's like as Jen's saying, it was. I imagine it was really kind of big for the players, particularly the ones that had been here for a while. Like performance-wise, it was actually probably one of the games I was least happy with this season from us. But despite the scoreline,
that's such
a bloody
answer. Never happy.
Breaking that record in the amount that they did, and that we did that day. Yeah, it was a good day.
Yeah, the record's tumbled. Were you displeased with the performance, James? A bit like Jody Morris at the weekend for the men, 2-0 up, and he was saying that we were playing terrible because he didn't feel like the team was sticking to the plan. Was that where your head was at?
Somewhat. I wouldn't say we were playing terrible because we were playing well. Yeah, I just would have liked a bit more variety in what we were doing.
Yeah,
he wanted 20 goals, not 10.
Hey, what might have been, eh? What might have been? Thank you, Jen. Now, she's been sitting quiet is my fire starter. But Charlie, set these guys alight because your question's a belter.
Okay, guys, it's for both of you. There is a small club up the A420 or the A420, whatever you want to call it. Describe them using one word.
Swearing's allowed.
James suddenly hates us.
Silence.
Shit.
Hey.
I know the drill.
What he said.
Well done. You've passed the test. Again, Chris, on your big comeback, I told you we were raising the editorial bar tonight, pal.
Well, absolutely, mate. I was just going to bust in there and say, well done, Charlie, because on the script it says, there's a club up the A420, and she added in the word small, which I thought, genius.
Yeah, I told you, Charlie's my fire starter, mate. Don't you worry.
Look, it's not my first time, Chris.
Yeah, it's not her first rodeo. Don't you worry. And speaking of people where it's not their first rodeo, Annie's got the next question.
Hello. This one is for Lally. You win the lottery. What is the first thing you splash the cash on for Swindon Town Women?
Don't say new players.
I'm thinking Happy Meal.
Yes, Happy Meal. Actually, no, we can upgrade. I think 6 chicken.
Oh yeah.
That didn't work out well last time. I promised you about that. Training ground.
Oh, now tell us more, James. Tell us more.
It's obviously with the men's not having their own kind of training base, that's always going to be a kind of limiting factor for the club, because they're always trying to find some commercial venue to kind of host them. So having the club's own training ground, it allowed them to build the academy more, and better training facilities all around.
So would you buy a training facility with on the basis that it was going to be shared by the men and the women? It was going to be a big shared overarching Swindon Town training ground.
Yeah, ideally you'd have a big complex where everything Swindon is.
Mm.
Is this the start of a Tom Broadbent Lounge syndicate for the lottery?
Do you know what? What a great shout! Why don't we do that, Joe?
If you're buying tickets, all right.
I think. Do you know what? I reckon there's got to be a way that we could do something like that.
We'll look into it. We'll look into it.
Yeah, we will.
If I win, whatever it is, £11 million the weekend, I promise I'll buy us a training ground.
Well, that sounds grand. Training ground it is. It's that my mind's boggling, because the training ground is never something. I have this conversation. I've said this on the show so many times. Ever since my kids were little, and we've got quite a trip to get to the county ground most Saturdays and Tuesday nights. This is one of those conversations where you go, if you won the lottery, what would you do? And I've never put training ground in there, but yeah, listening to James waxing lyrical, it makes so much sense. It's got to be a training ground.
Lee Power lied to us.
Got to be a training ground. Well, allegedly.
No, allegedly.
Allegedly, Joe. I've got the next question for you, and it's for KP. KP, who's the biggest joker in the squad?
I'm going to have to go on my time when I'm here, and Jen's going to hate this, but there's a girl that's left last season called Ellie Olds. And honestly, I think when she left, she took a part of our social corner massively away from the club. And Jen, I feel sorry for you, mate, because I know you two are like chalk and cheese, mate.
She's the ant to my deck. It's my right arm.
Yeah, mate, yeah. And I think you don't realise it until she's gone. I think she's like one of those characters. And I think if we're going back to that lottery question, getting Ellie Olds back with a chauffeur or whatever will be on that list as well from Fulham. But yeah, I think she just, I don't know, she just had this awkwardness about her, but it was always funny. I don't know, I'm quite a serious person, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question to.
But is there, all right, so collectively, guys, have you got a prank culture? And has there been like an epic prank that you guys still refer to this day?
No, after that show where you were where you were asking us who pranks, and we say no one does it. We were at Maidenhead away, and then
Stop.
Oh, Jen, are you okay?
we hid Jen's boot.
It's not even funny, but it was funny.
You hid Jen's boot? What, just one of them?
Yeah,
just one. And I honestly thought I'd forgotten it.
It was actually Lanes that took it, and then I think Bowds hid it.
I think
you didn't happen to find my boots as well, did you? Because my boots are still in Maidenhead.
They're still there. You got to go get them.
My boots are still in Maidenhead, which I need to go and get at some point.
See, that's a simple prank, but it's an effective one.
Surely you drew some pictures of her boots with a Sharpie. That's the case.
No, I didn't, but maybe next time.
Oh, you've got to keep a Sharpie in the kit bag when it comes to pranking. Like, you've got to do that.
Yeah, Emily McGrogan is a sly dog as well. She'll always get involved, but you don't know she is. She flies under the radar, Emily McGrogan.
See now, Jen, you're not the first person to tell us that. And I love a little bit of devilment in my goalkeepers. So, yeah, she's definitely got that twinkle in her eye, hasn't she?
By far the biggest shithouse at the Town Women's Football Club.
I don't know if we've told a story, but there's a story this season where I can't remember who we played. I think it was at home, and the centre forward was on the edge of the 18-yard box, and Emily's got the ball in her hand. Clearly, the centre forward knows what she's doing. Anyway, the player goes to the referee about, look, she's taking her time, so Emily just kicks the ball at her as she kicks the ball out for a goal kick. And we're thinking, God, if she turns the ball around and scores. Anyway, the referee takes Emily's side, books the player and gives Emily the free kick, and we're just wondering how on earth she's got away with it. And that's the sort of thing that she does. Which I remember the centre forward, I can't remember who we were playing against, but the centre forward was fuming. Was like, she's just kicked the ball at me and I get booked. And the referee's like, yep, you do. And I move.
A pure Saidu Khan against Mansfield.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Joe, well, we're on a similar line here, Joe, aren't we? You've got the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know the answer to this before I even asked the question. But both of you guys, who out of the current playing squad would you least like to get on the bad side of?
Oh, yeah. Are there any grudge bearers, gentlemen? Any grudge bearers?
They're thinking long and hard about this.
Yeah, they are. I'm kind of scared by their silence. I can't lie. What do you reckon, KP? Is there anyone that you want to get on the right?
Have we got a countdown clock?
When you obviously I've coached the girls for like nearly 4 seasons or something like that. Obviously I've had running with probably all of them at some capacity, and you're hoping that, all right, what happens in the next session? Anyone that holds grudges, I think it was going to hold a grudge depending on how bad the scenario is.
We'll put it this way: we could tweak this another way. Who would you suspect would have a long memory and a freshly installed Sharpie in their kit bag? Let's put it that way.
Me, because I'm still furious. KP shouted at me last year.
That was in my mind, mate. Yeah.
I'm still surprised.
Did you deserve it?
I'm still surprised
No.
me and KP talk after Maidenhead at home last season.
That's another one in my mind as well. Yeah.
Oh, I love that one.
There's a couple.
KP's the secret dark.
Nah, see, the thing is, I don't mind those because we've obviously with both those scenarios, we've had it out and we've kind of moved on from it. It's the silent assassins, the one that
have we?
Well, I don't know. I have at least. I don't know what grade is. I think it's the silent assassins. I reckon someone like Gypsy or Lanes would be a silent assassin. I reckon they would take it, but they wouldn't tell you. And you're like, they would be quietly hating on you, but you wouldn't know about it. And I think that's worse.
Quietly polluting your tea.
Yeah. I think they'd just be like, they're not vocal enough to have a go at you in public, but they'll be like, I really don't like you after what you've done last week or whatever it is. Yeah, I think Gypsy or Lanes
strikes me as the person that would be like, you're there speaking to her afterwards, she's smiling away, looking back at you, but she's tapping away on her phone without looking at it, because you just know she can type without looking at the keyboard, and you know she's typing when you're talking to her.
Oh, move us along. James, we'll give you a pass on that one. We're going to catch up with you later on another one. Right, who we got next? I think it's you, Alice, isn't it?
It is me, yes. My one's for James, and it's what's been your biggest frustration today at Swindon Town?
Last game we played, game against Keynsham, probably.
Oh, tell us more, James. So obviously it was fair bit riding on the game. Would it be fair to say a game that you would have? I won't say expect to win. You don't expect to win any, but on form you would have hoped to have won. Is it along those lines? Was there anything specific? Was it just the nature of it? Because obviously we know you gave their goal a peppering.
Is a game is one that I put in bracket of like we have to win, and yeah, I felt we took our foot off the gas at the start of the second half and kind of coasted, but hadn't killed the game to a point where we could afford to do that.
Mm. Yeah, and it's as those games are unfolding. I mean, James, we've all stood there and watched football matches like that. As those games are unfolding, were you on the touchline kind of? It's one of those where you kind of wish that you were out there, right? Because you want to go and like just grab older people and like give them a good shake.
I can't run anymore, so I wouldn't be any use out there. But yeah, KP was quite helpful to me that game because I was quite prepared to let him just suffer and sit with the loss, and so we can learn from it a bit more. But he got me to change it up to go for the win.
Mm. All right,
can I, James? I think you got another one that might annoy you more.
Oh, hello! I sense worms being opened again.
James, how do you spell my surname and your surname?
Well, mine's only a few letters long. Yours is a considerable amount of letters long, but everyone seems to get mine wrong, and yours fine.
Well, keep your powder dry, gentlemen, because you never know where we're headed. What's Chris? Please interject.
I think I might. KP, this one's for you. How long before we can stream Swindon women's games and buy merch? I think it's quite an important question actually for spreading the word about the club and how people can get involved, and it's a kind of softer way in, I guess, isn't it, than actually going to a game?
Yeah, I don't like to do things by half. So one of the things I do as a coach on the pitch, but I do a lot of stuff off the pitch with the club, and I have done since I got involved. Whether that be doing some of our social media stuff, trying to push our YouTube highlights, things like that. And one of them has been absolutely, how do we get more involved? And I think the vice chairman, previously Mike Dixon, wanted to do something like that as well. And the fine balance is, I'll be honest with you, it's about, if you stream the game so much, people don't have to come and watch the game. You don't then get the gate. And I'm not on about the money. It's more having 250, 300 people at Foundation Park to watch Larkhall and Bournemouth. And 100% in those two games, I think having 200-300 people at those games allowed us to get the win back at Larkhall, being 1-0 down, and to hold on to that 3-2 win against Bournemouth. But on the other side, when you got people that potentially are either abroad or can't get to the game, how do you stream it? We've been lucky enough to buy Veo this year, and they've got the facility to do Veo Live, which other clubs do. And again, then there's a point of growing the game and getting people involved, but then you're going to give every other team watching your game live, essentially, which currently in the men's game and the women's professional game, you have to upload your footage, I think, within like a day of your game, whereas we don't have to. So you don't know anything about the other team unless you go and watch them or share footage. So there's that tactical give up for fans to come and watch your game live. I spoke to Hannah's about this before. I think we're going to potentially try to do something in the future, but yeah, it's definitely on the cards. To give you an idea, the league are going to go to what's going to be known as a minimum requirements around coaching, and one of them is going to be around game footage. And I see that now they've sorted out the WSL and Championship, and they're sort of self-sufficient, and they've sold that enough via Sky Sports and FA Play. I think the National Leagues are next in line for that, which is quite interesting because hopefully they will go to Tier 3 and Tier 4. And that'll be pushing, and it'll be mandated for clubs to do it rather than just because some clubs do and some clubs don't. But yeah, it's definitely one of those ones where you've got different factors. You've got the ability to keep your gate high and get people coming to watch games physically, giving up footage for other teams to watch, but while trying to engage a fan base and grow that. And it's balancing those three out. Quite a serious response, but.
How about the merch side, Keelan? Because obviously you go into the club shop, you can buy women's sizes of the men's shirt. When will we get to a stage where it is just like uniform kits, like across all the squads, men's shirt, like the women are wearing the same shirt? Because obviously women are wearing Puma this year, but they're still subtly different from, well, quite significantly different actually, side by side. But yet the women are wearing the green kit. So it's like, when will that be that uniformity and a push to, for example, get a 9 Colston shirt? And because there's people have asked for that on the show, asking for them.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I think last year when Clem bought the club, just before he went back in the September, he got the whole women's club upstairs in the lounge and said, basically, this is my plan. And he was quite honest. He goes, I don't know much about you. I don't know much about the women's game here, but I want to help you. I want to get you promoted. I want to find out more about you. And fair play to him. He has done absolutely that with Rob Angus, with our club committee, to the point where I think it was October this year that they then said, is in this season, that, you know what, we're going to accelerate this and you're going to come under us a little bit quicker. Obviously, that happened in October. By that point, they've already ordered all the shirts and stuff like that, and we had already had a sponsor and ordered a kit and stuff to arrive. So I think that was why it didn't happen this year. Stand fast next season. I'd like to think that will happen. And Ree, who at the time was before she went on maternity, she asked the first question to Clem, and the question was, we're Swindon Town women, but we don't wear the same kit. We don't wear the same training kit. How do we feel a part of you when, at the time, like James said, they were paying to play and they want to feel a part of a club? At the moment, we're sort of not even under the club. We had like a license to use the badge, if you like, which is quite common in the women's game. And then you see some clubs that then get booted out, which happened to Seaward when they were part of Leyton Orient and other clubs. Fair play, they've said, no, you're going to be a part of us, so we're going to support you better. So I would be surprised if that doesn't come around sooner than later. If you haven't seen, there has been one person already that has got a name in the back of their shirt, in Casey, who's obviously followed us home and away most of the games this season. And yeah, she had Bowles on the back of her shirt, which is class to see. There are other clubs in our league that do it, and they do it really well. Exeter being one of them, and if you see them if they come to visit us, I think they're 9th of April. I think we got them now because they moved the fixture. But if you watch what they've done over the last few years, they get quite good support for their men's club. They're engaged with their community foundation. We are probably about a year, maybe a year and a half behind them. So that's the path, or other clubs have already tread. We just need to now go along it and learn from mistakes they've made, essentially, such as playing in Swindon, for instance. As has been announced recently, season ticket next year, 5 games with the county ground next year. That is class. That is, as Jen said, that is something that they could only have dreamed of before. So fair play to the club for putting the money where the mouth is and saying, look, that's what you want, that's what we'll give you. Now, on the other side of that, we need to get the fan base going so that we don't just hit 720. We're hitting 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. And I think I did something last year and said that you go and watch a men's game on a Saturday and then the following Sunday you go and watch a women's game. That's ultimately got with the goal for Swindon Town as a club. And I include the academy in that, in being able to go and watch an under-18s game, an under-16s game, if that's what you want to do. They should be able to get your flavour of Swindon Town on a Saturday and a Sunday as much as you want. So yeah, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I know that's what the girls want as well. So what they want, they get, hopefully.
Well, funny enough that you mentioned Casey, because Casey's actually mailed us, typed us a lovely letter, clearly with the help of her mum. And she just said to say to both yourself, KP and James, it's not a question for you, but Casey's asked if I can thank, i.e. myself, if I can thank you for all the kindness that she has had since going to the girls' games. She can't wait to see them soon. So direct from Casey, well done, guys. I mean, ultimately, you know, it's lovely hearing from Casey like that, isn't it? But you know, we want to be getting hundreds of messages like that. You know, loads and loads of messages from, you know, young ladies like Casey, whose imagination's been, properly captured by what you guys are doing. But yeah, certainly a great start, guys. And I think, the other thing on the uniform, Keelan, on the kits, Keelan, it is that keyword uniform, isn't it? You know as well as I do. If you're in an organisation where you're wearing a uniform, you feel you're unbelievably part of one big body. It's critical, right? It's absolutely critical you're all wearing the same kit. So I'm not at all surprised that Ree spoke up and said that as one of the sort of senior leaders of the team.
Yeah, and fair play to Clem. He said, look, yeah. He goes, that's just one of the things that, and he was quite honest. He said, at the moment, he's focused when he bought the club. There's a lot of stuff going behind closed doors that I think pretty much everyone knows about. He was like, I've got to deal with that first, and then we'll get round. You are on the list. You're just not number one priority at the moment. And I think the fact that we were acknowledged at first was like the first thing. The fact that he took his time out. Bear in mind, it was before a training night, so it was 6, 7 o'clock at night in the county ground before we went to training. So the fact that the owner came down and spoke directly to the girls and go, this is your chance to take to me and go, what is it you want? What's your biggest thing? And one of the girls was like, hey, look, Brandon, we want to be a part of you. We are not just playing the badge. We are playing for Swindon Town, representing you. And like I said, I think just last year just came about too late, as in this season. So last summer. But I would be surprised if that's not one of the things that's going forward next year. And on the case of Casey as well, it's not just girls as well. It's again, someone, I think it might have been Reese, she said that she went to drop her son at school, I think it was, and another boy came up to her and she was like, you're a footballer. And it's not just about girls having an aspiration to go and be a footballer themselves and see our girls going out in the county ground playing, but it's also boys seeing a footballer, and it's not just men playing football, it's women as well, which I think is huge. So it's on both sides of the coin. And if we can get more people into that county ground, that obviously it's not just used once every 2 weeks for a men's game, it's used for women's football, men's football, events going on at there, then that just helps the club overall. Which and like I said, merch. The more merch that comes out of that club shop, only the better for everyone. So.
Amen.
On the kit as well. Sorry, Hannah's. Bowds, how did it make you feel when you first saw Casey wearing a shirt with your name on the back of it?
Obviously, I've been at this club a long time, and just for someone to want the name on the back of my shirt was just like astronomical. Like, I remember just sending it to like all my family, like, you will never guess what. Like, obviously, being the age I am now, I just think like, what else can I do to help inspire the next generation of footballers? And I think that's really happened since like I've had my daughter, and just to see Casey like so involved in wanting to get to know us and like find us so amazing and want to be like us is honestly like incredible. And I think sometimes it's just down to like her parents, and her mum's amazing, trying to make her like taking her to all the games and like getting to know us as well. And it's really just like triggered a big thing with all the girls. Like, the girls love seeing her, and I think we need to have more, like, you're right, have more children like Casey that want to come and get to know us and have the names on the back of her shirt. And I love when she comes to walk out with me, because I'm like, yeah, she's got my name on the back of my shirt.
Do you look at Annie and go, look?
Yeah, I'm like, look, not everyone wants to score goals. Some people
not everyone
just
wants
want to be
shirt,
the reliable person at the back. I had one up on Annie this season, and that's the one. But I'm sure she'll probably get a million more. But I had the first, so I'm happy.
Well, I think it's a massive honour having, being the first Swindon Town women's player to actually have a fan print your name on their shirt. Like, I can't imagine who the first Swindon player was. It was probably someone like Fjortoft or something. So, I mean, that's mental.
It certainly is, but I hate to burst all your bubbles, but there is a Diaz Butcher shirt being worn around the London-Kent border. There certainly was at the weekend. So, but she's not here to mop up the glory. And I
mean, fair play, whoever's bought that. That's £1 lesser. There
has been a Colston shirt also seen on the London-Kent border as well. And Annie will know all about what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I won't repeat myself. Merch, I think, is just absolutely critical. As Chris was saying, it's the real soft sell. It's absolutely about advertising. It's amplifying the whole 9 yards. But yeah, I mean, kit absolutely critical as well. Absolutely critical. Along similar lines, Jen's got the next question, haven't you, Jen?
I have, yes. So in 60 seconds, Lally, KP, can you just sell us the virtue of Swindon Town Women's Football Club 2023 to 24 season ticket?
Your 60 seconds start now.
Sorry, mate. Can you repeat that? What did you say? Sorry, you want me to do what?
Basically, KP, just tell us why we should buy a women's season ticket next year.
Sell us the virtues, KP. Sell us the virtues of a Swindon Town.
Tell us why
women's
is it important,
season
KP?
ticket.
Let's go. Right. Most senior side, women's side in Wiltshire and Swindon. First of all, 5 games at the county ground out of 11 games. £40 a season ticket. Absolute bargain. Big push for promotion, hopefully next season as well. Pushing up the ladder, hopefully in the same kit as the rest of the club. From a 16, 17-year-old girl starting out Swindon in Emily McGrogan in goal, all the way through to a 16, 17-year-old Emerson Evans, all the way through to our older players like Jen and Tori, who are still showing exactly how it can be done on a Sunday. Longevity in the likes of Bowles, who've been here for probably longer than some of the furniture.
Inspirational.
James, any help?
it's the whole 9 yards. Well, there's your 60 seconds, KP. You did a brilliant job. I mean, I think the key thing is there, if you think about the cost of that season ticket, what is it, about £3.50 a game? And like you said, 5 of them are going to be actually at the county ground, which I think is critical, not including the ones that will be clearly next door at Foundation Park. So it's certainly worth stretching, if you can, stretch your dollar. You think about a time where people have been, I mean, whilst I live in London, I keep a keen eye on sort of local affairs, and I see as in local to Swindon and Wiltshire, and at a time where people are complaining about less and less leisure facilities being available to you at Swindon, there's this wonderful opportunity to get involved in a whole new community, a team and a club that's mushrooming. And I can only say, listen, I'm not saying this as an agent at the club. I'm speaking as a Swindon Town fan who's on his own journey with these ladies, getting to know them and extending my Swindon Town supporting experience from just a Saturday to a Saturday and a Sunday. I haven't looked back, and I've got daughters and a little son that's really engaging with it as well. So, well spoken, KP, well spoken. And Annie, you've got the next question. This is a corker.
Yes, I do. Though KP nearly stole my thunder earlier. This one is for Lally. Can you spell Keelan's family name without cheating, please?
He's so clever, he'll probably spell it backwards for you.
PAN. I need to be writing it down.
No cheating, James. No cheating.
He's cheating.
He's
not
cheating,
cheating.
He's writing
genuinely,
it down.
I only know
he's
it.
got a pen.
I only know it if I'm writing it.
I'm a visual learner.
Don't start me on that because that doesn't exist. PANAYIOTOU.
Oh, he's nailed it. He's nailed it. Got there in the end, James. Well done, you. Chris P, move us along.
I was going to say, I thought that started with the letter W. Anyway, James,
it does sometimes.
James, can you name a player you've coached that you think will go straight to the top of the women's game?
Obviously, Emerson's coming through and having a really big impact and playing really well. She was someone I first kind of saw. I think she was when she was like 15, playing against our under-16s at the time in their first game of the season. From that game, I'd wanted to get her at the club. I was the development manager.
James, what was it about that performance with Emerson that caught your eye? Because obviously, so she's just hit her third senior goal, hasn't she? Is it third or second? I think it's third, isn't it? What was it that you saw in Emerson that made her a must sign?
She even back then and still now, she was just lightning quick. But quite often with youth players, sometimes when they're really fast, that's kind of the only thing that they have about them, because they kind of just get away with knocking it and running after it. But her finishing ability is brilliant. Just technically, she's really good. I think it was her second game, she was finding herself kind of stuck for second game for us, finding herself stuck in a corner, no way out, and then just buying fouls. Just doing that at the level that she's playing at her age is pretty special.
Yeah, wow. I mean, Annie, you've spoken about Emerson before, haven't you? With the benefit. I mean, it's not like you're the old stager, Annie, but you're quite further down the line with a lot more kind of career mileage in the tank. I'm guessing you second everything that James has said there. What is it that catches your eye when you watch Emerson playing and training?
Yeah, 100% agree with Lally. Do you know what? It's like, I think people sometimes just look at technical ability and stuff like that, but she is just very clever as well. Like Lally said, drawing fouls, it's something that I don't think you really expect from a younger player, knowing, right, here I'm in a difficult position on the pitch, not really where we want the ball to be. Let's try and get a foul out of this. She's so clever, and yeah, I can learn from her as well. It's not just her learning from me. I can learn from her.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, pace to burn, which is, I mean, someone once said that to me. That I remember talking to Ken Ryder, who was the scout that was credited with bringing Charlie Austin to the club. I had a conversation with him about what's the first attribute that always catches your eye, and he was like, pace in football has always got a value, But then he said, obviously, other layers are absolutely critical. But yeah, he said pace is always something that, from a scout's point of view, immediately catches the eye. Moving us along, we're going back to my fire starter, Charlie. You're up. Stage is yours.
Okay, this one is for KP. So,
of course
KP,
it is. Of course it is.
Getting hammered here.
Please, can you tell me, KP, what happened in 1969 in the League Cup final?
Oh, You've had me here, haven't you?
You get a special prize, KP, if you sing it.
So, Arsenal are on their way to Wembley. A little old Swindon town come and ruin the day. Lucky enough, I wasn't old enough to be around for them. But I was listening to something the other day. I think someone was talking about I think you had Vic Morgan on. He was talking about watching the game back and complete.
Oh yeah. Every March the 15th, mate. Every March the 15th, we will all sit there, Keelan, because as we all know, in 1969 on League Cup final day, what happened, Joe?
The Arsenal went to Wembley. They walked the Wembley way.
Chris K, what happened next? Oh, we lost Chris. Chris P then, fill the gaps.
They thought they had it easy. They thought they won the cup.
Would anyone like to finish it for Keelan's benefit?
Along came Swindon Town FC and fucked the bastards up.
Oh, indeed, Jen, you've got another question for us.
Yeah, we're going back to you, KP, again. So, would you rather Arsenal win the Champions League, or would you rather see Swindon Town Football Club return to the Championship?
I'm going to be a bit emotional here. So my wife, obviously, some of you know, she's a physio for the men's club, and she was gutted when they lost to Port Vale last year. So promotion, because I see how hard she works. So yeah, promotion for the men's, absolutely.
And not just promotion, but promotion back to the Championship, please, would be very nice. Still feels to me like our rightful place. Our club should not be in the bottom two divisions and accepting of that. But that's just my personal opinion. It just so happens to be shared by at least another 40,000 Wiltshire folk. Joe, move us along. So we're nearing the end now. You'll be pleased to know, gentlemen, we're nearing the end. Joe, what you got?
Yeah, so I'm going to put my bookies hat on. I'll do a Sandro. I'll do a Sky Bet. Keelan and James, can you give us your tip for the Women's World Cup? Who are you going for?
England.
It's an easy goal, that is.
Easy tapping England then for Lally. Super. How about you, KP?
Yeah, you've got to go for your national country, England.
Are you two just like playing to the crowd, or is there some? Do you honestly believe we're going to win the World Cup?
Yeah. What? Why would we not? Obviously, USA going to be up there, aren't they? They're going to be one of the favourites, as they always are. But
yeah,
I think I think what we haven't realised with women's football over the last few years. When did the WSL go pro? 2018. We're very much in the infancy of like top women's football in this country, and I think we're only scratching the surface. And if they're already doing so well so far after 5 years of professional game, yeah, I think we've got to back our own country.
I can't think who it was, but I saw an interview in the last couple of days, and it's with one of the Lionesses, and they talked about, you guys, one of you two might be able to help me, or indeed one of you ladies might be able to help me. But they were talking about the winning the Euros and the psychology behind that, like what that's done in terms of the psychological shift. Like there's, the confidence with a hint of arrogance that it injects, that belief that actually, no, we are, we're not the pretenders here. Like we are absolutely dining at the top table because, we are literally like one of the top sort of 3-4 women's teams on the planet. Like there was a big psychological shift, and I can't feel like, I'm sure it was Leah Williamson.
I was going to say, I think it was Leah Williamson.
I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, just saying that. Psychologically, huge shift. All right, then England it is. Alice, you've got the next one.
Oh, it's me.
Oh, this is a belter.
James, what's the first thing in your house you can see that is yellow? What is it? Describe it for the listeners. Pick it up, and then you need to throw it in the bin.
What's in your eye line, James? What can you see that's yellow?
There is nothing yellow in my house.
Oh, you absolute! That's class. That is class. We're gonna require
legendary.
We're gonna require photographic evidence. You haven't even got a set of marigolds under the sink or anything like that, James.
No.
Good man. You've absolutely nailed that.
He just realises there's a cost of living crisis. He doesn't want to throw anything out. That's all it is.
Chris K, move us along.
Certainly will, guys. This is a really good question, this one. And it's for both of you. If you could make one change for the betterment of the women's game, what would it be? That is a thinker, that one, isn't it? Who's diving in first?
Probably similar. It's probably similar to the men's game, really. More investment further down the pyramids.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah, I was going to say, I think for me, it's got to be the biggest thing we've seen this season is like the FA Cup prize money, for instance. So last year we won one game, lost one game, and got £800. This year, won 2 games, lost 1 game, and we got, I think it was just over £8,000. That for me is huge for what that done for not our club, but other clubs as well at that same level. So you're going to give clubs low down the level a huge investment. So I think Portland Rovers, who we played, and fair play to them, when we emailed them and said, look, we want to get the game on as a double header, it was almost like their Champions League final, and they were honest about it. But they're like, look, we're not expected to beat you, but we want to play and go out in a football league. But they must have got about 7-8 grand to get to that point of the competition. So what that will do for that club and their youth system of investing in, like James said before, training facilities, coaches, getting girls playing, I think is huge. And there's also been a lot of public stuff about it recently. They increased it by 3 million in the women's game, but increased the men's by 4, so the gap's still bigger. We've got to take our time with this and do it the right way. But yeah, I think funding competitions. So we get nothing in the league in terms of finances for getting 4th or 10th in the league. But the FA Cup is the one. So I think that's got to be the big change coming forward.
Yeah, so funding further down the line. The next question, guys, was going to be from me, but you've already sort of answered it further up the line. But Charlie's got a brilliant theoretical question to bring this all to a glorious halt for you both. You'll be pleased to know. Charlie, put them out their misery.
Okay, this is for both of you. So Meg Attenborough is your personal trainer for both of you, and she's got the hump. Who out of the two of you would break first?
What do you reckon? What do you reckon, James? Who's going first?
So you've got fiery Meg. Meg's got the right hump. She's putting you both through your paces, and she's beasting you both. Who breaks first?
Well, like physically.
Yeah.
Oh, me all day long.
I thought you meant mentally.
Well, mate, it could be mentally. It could be mentally if you want.
Yeah, physically I'll go straight away.
Lally, there you go, Meg. There you go. You've broken the gaffer. Well, look, guys, those were your silly questions. Congratulations. How much did you enjoy your ambush? I bet you were thinking you were in for a nice, pleasant evening with us at Tom Broadbent Lounge tonight. And a combination of Charlie, Annie, Alice and Jen ambushed you beautifully. How was it for you?
I'm a bit scared for training tomorrow.
I think they're used to me ambush, so it's a normal Wednesday for them.
Yeah, just get ambushed on a Tuesday, Thursday, not a Wednesday usually. Jen was the sly one. That I wasn't expecting. Annie, yeah, expect. Ballard's expect. Roland's, absolutely. Jen coming like a wrecking ball.
Yeah, she was top draw. Well done, Jen.
What can I say?
And Jen, salute to you, because you literally you created a Twitter account specifically to come on tonight and abuse your management team. That shows a certain amount of front.
I think it more shows my age by the fact that I don't have a working Twitter account.
Everyone get someone younger to set it up for you, Jen.
So listen, we've got I did promise we've got the small matter of April the 2nd, Sunday, April the 2nd at the County Ground, 2 p.m. kickoff. Keelan, correct me if I'm wrong. And we are over the moon to be providing a whole host of coverage for you at the game. So we're going to be up in the gantry. We're going to be in the we're going to be in the press box. And we're going to be pitch side with us at Tom Broadbent Lounge hats on, providing you with all the coverage inside the grounds, up close and personal with the teams, with the management. So we are delighted to be playing that role for you guys. And thank you ever so much for the invite and the opportunity to do that. Keelan, now's your chance, really. I mean, do you want to let listeners know a little bit more about obviously what's going on? Obviously, Southampton are flying. Big opportunity to impress at the county ground, and I know you're expecting another big crowd. Do you want to just sort of clue the listeners up in terms of ticket pricing and things like that, and logistics for getting themselves to the ground?
Yeah, so tickets have gone on sale this morning. Announced an hour and a bit ago. I'm just confirming. Yeah, so £3 for adults, under 18s and over 65s are free. There'll be limited tickets on the door. So obviously we encourage everyone to pre-order their tickets and buy them online. Legends Lounge is going to be open from 12:30, and they're going to be showing the Arsenal women's, Man City women's game in there. Legends Lounge bar and kiosk will be open for spectators, and then, like you said, you guys are going to be running our sort of match day coverage on the day. More to come out, I'm sure, in the next week or so. But the big thing for me really is the push. The club are invested in us and saying, look, there you go on the men's football league pitch and make it a Swindon Town pitch rather than just a men's football league pitch. And now we need the other side of the coin to happen, as in get out of your Sunday roast, put that down, in the words of Bowles, and come and support your women's team. For us, this is the starting. This is just getting us started with looking forward to next season, having 5 games there. So, and then the competition. Southampton, good side. They've been in our league for a fair few years. They're currently 5th. We're currently 6th. So if we want to have a finish in the 3rd, 4th, 5th in the league, we need to go and beat them, really, because that's almost a 6-pointer. So they've done well against us this season. So we need to come up with something different. We played at that pitch twice this year and probably not putting our best performances. So hopefully they've been put to bed, and we can go and put on a good performance and get the win. Most importantly.
We wish you all the best with it, Keelan. So just to confirm then, Sunday, April the 2nd, 2 p.m. kickoff, but getting there bright and early. Plenty of football on the TV, plenty of live coverage on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge via Twitter Spaces, and keep your eyes peeled because hopefully, we'll be making another couple of interesting announcements about additional coverage for the game as well. But that's not the only game. Obviously, you've got a fixture change, haven't you, as well, Keelan? So the Moneyfields game that was cancelled from last week has been pulled forward for this Sunday, and your fixture against Exeter is now going to be on April 9th. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm not really sure why the league's done it that way, but they've moved Exeter to the 9th. In our league, you only have to give 5 days' notice to move a fixture. So Exeter, who are planning to travel this Sunday, to us have been postponed. That's now the 9th of April, and they Rolexed Moneyfield. So we're now playing Moneyfield on Sunday at Fairford Town Stadium, so Sem Stadium. And again, I think they're 4th in the league at the moment from memory. And again, if we want to now go and compete at the top end of the table, we need to get results on the board. We've played them once already, so the girls know what they're about. They've come up from last season, done quite well, fair play to them, recruited quite well from the team in the league above. But on our day, James will tell the girls, you can beat any team in this league on your day, as proven by us previously. So turn up and we'll get a result. But two tough fixtures coming up in the next 2 weeks.
Well, we wish you all the best, Keelan, and yourself, James. And James, special thank you to you coming on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge tonight. You've been a brilliant sport. Thanks ever so much, and congrats on your debut, pal.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
It won't be the last time. You be sure of it. And Jen, congratulations on your debut. As Keelan said, a rambunctious debut from the old stager.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful. You're welcome anytime. And Captain Alice Bowden, thank you ever so much, Alice, for joining us. It's been a treat having you.
Thank you. You know I love coming on.
We love having you. And Annie, as always, absolute treasure. Best of luck for the weekend. Keep banging them in.
Thank you.
And Charlie, a special place in my heart for my fire starter. Absolutely delightful performance from you tonight, Roland.
Shock. Also, I just want to say thank you for my jumper, which arrived today, which
You're
I will
very
be
welcome.
sporting proudly around Gloucestershire.
I should hope it is. But finally bringing up the standards in that god awful county. But Charlie, there's one thing missing, and that's a nice tweet of you in said garment. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that before the night is out.
Bloody hell. Charlie's just come. I've been here how long? I haven't even got a bloody jumper yet.
You need to sing, Bouds.
Alice, there's levels to this game.
Fuming, it's all right. Don't worry.
You've got to sing. You've got to sing for your dinner.
Commitment gets you nowhere, I see.
Alice, you've got to sing for your dinner on this show, pal. That's all I can tell you. And I will tell you that Charlie has sung, Annie has sung. If you want to sing, like, by all means, but you can't photobomb on the pitch Annie and Lanes' song and then assume that that's going to get you a hoodie.
Or did they photobomb me? That is the question.
Well, now, see, they were giving it Mr. Brightside with gusto, and you just sort of bounced through the middle of it. I mean, some might say you did a Jarvis Cocker on Michael Jackson there and completely ruined it.
To be fair, I probably did, because I am a one-man band, so I don't need them.
Well, the challenge is out there, Alice. It won't be the last time you're on the show. Keep your powder dry. We want a virtuoso performance from you next time. We left the door open this time, but you just failed to take your chance.
That's fine. That's fine. Don't worry. I'll go home and cry now.
Oh, it made me feel guilty already. God,
it's all right. Don't worry.
You've got my 10 years somewhere else. Who holds the grudges? Now we know.
This is what KP and Lally have to put up with on a weekly. We all know it.
Charlie, you better not turn up for training soon, because I'm going to take it from you.
She's a killer, this one, isn't she? It's been an absolute treat. You are free to drift off into the night. Thank you ever so much for your company. And thanks, Keelan. And thanks, James. It's been brilliant having you all on.
Cheers, guys.
Take good care, folks. Thanks, Jen.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, mate. Cheers, buddy.
Well, gentlemen of the Tom Broadbent Lounge, as we bid a farewell to our wonderful Swindon Town Women's Football Club. They're a brilliant bunch of characters, aren't they? They really are. It'd be so tempting for people to just assume that, you know, we're doing some big promotional job for the club, but I can put my hand on my heart and say it's really not like that. They're a brilliant bunch of characters. They really are. And the more football I see from them and the more conversations I have with them, the more you just find yourself sort of sucked into that world. So, listen, I was an ardent critic of women's football at the start of the season. I really didn't. And bearing in mind, I mean, I had 20 years of working in the game. I felt like I was just being force-fed something I didn't really want. And it's a little bit embarrassing for me to admit that now. I was just so close-minded to it. But it's a bit like supporting Swindon Town. Like you don't necessarily follow Swindon Town for the glory, do you? You know, there's so much more that sort of, you know, fills our world, sort of following our football club. And I'm on a similar journey with the women's team. And like I said, from my perspective, the more football, the better. And now my weekends are taken up by Swindon Town. So can't be a bad thing. But listen, moving on to part 2 of the show. So I'll start by saying this. We have released a brand new Tom Broadbent Lounge hoodie, but they're going like the clappers, and we've only got 7 of them left. So if you want one, they're 25 quid, including postage and packing. You can see visuals of them on our thread. But 10% of every purchase is kicking back to the Swindon Town Football Club Warm Room by virtue of a charity payment that's made directly to the inimitable Dean McMackin, who is making sure that the Warm Room have got all the relevant supplies and whatnot that they can get with the money that we generate from the hoodies. So, as I say, we've got 7 of them left, a range of sizes from small, extra small, through to 5XL. So if you'd like one of our latest hoodies, the blackout ones have all sold out. It's not those. There's a new colour version with exquisite Swindon Town Football Club background waffle surrounding the badge. So if you fancy one of those, lovely premium garments, fill your boots. But the reason I'm bringing it out now is we have one to give away, and we're going to be giving it away to a quality contributor from the Swindon Town supporter base tonight. And I'm just going to frame it like this. So we've just done a poll on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge in relation to the season 2022-23. 449 votes, as Chris Kelly will tell you, is a good sample size. Chris, would I be right in saying that?
I think you're right in saying that.
Yeah, so a good 449 votes. We've got 78% of the vote. The question was basically a 4-pronged question, but the question was asking about where you believe our season's gone, or what do you believe, what is your aspirations for the end of the season? Asked individual Swindon Town fans that. So 449 of you responded. 78% of our fan base, bearing in mind we're in March, 78% of the fan base have said the season's over. 78% of you. 13% have got splinters in their backsides, basically going, I just don't know either way. 7% have said, I still believe we'll make the playoffs, just 7%. And 2% actually have some belief, you deluded fools, some might say. 2% have belief that we are still going up. So we're going to kind of start picking this apart. So season 2022-23, in the minds of a lot of people, as I said, right at the very, very, very start of the show, it seemed like obviously management were saying promotion was the goal. Technical director was pinned on this because he wasn't saying the P word enough and came out and said, no, look, obviously it's all about promotion. For fans, obviously off the back of last year, we were all expecting next steps, which was, look, we've made the playoffs. We at least want to be getting to Wembley. And certainly if we're getting to Wembley, we want to be winning. Most Swindon Town fans, I think, were plumping on a summer of investment, building on what we did last year. And this is before we had departures and arrivals at the county ground. So I think most people were going, oh, all right, okay, after Port Vale, it's got to be promotion. So everything seemed to be, in the Swindon Town world, geared towards promotion, right? It's kind of not gone that way. So we're gonna open that up to the floor. And we've had a few people that have tweeted us this week asking to be given the stage. I'm still waiting for Jack, if you're listening in, hit your speaker request, because we definitely want to be hearing from you. So one of the points that was put to us was, I think it was addressed to me almost directly, and it was something along the lines of, Hannah's, use your contacts at the club to make sure that the fans are heard. I'll say I took exception to that. I don't mean it in that way, but I guess my response to that was, listen, our show's been here now for well over a year, every Wednesday. I mean, you'd be fairly misinformed if you thought that the club weren't listening to our show, given the amount of access that we get from the show. One of the reasons we get that access is that the club listen to and appreciate the show and what it is we're trying to achieve. So we've said every single week, same message, keep putting it out there. Listen, if you want your voice heard, like the way that you need to get your voice heard is you need to come on shows like ours and start sharing your opinions. So what we want to know from all of you lot, dear listeners, is what the bloody hell you think has gone wrong this season. What has gone wrong? I mean, listen, we'll start panel by making this a little bit easier for the listeners while they're kind of like gearing up their ire. What do you believe's gone wrong? I mean, Chris, let's have it from you. It's been a while since you've been on the show, mate, and I know, obviously, in that period of time, you've seen an awful lot of Swindon Town football matches. So, focusing, like I said, going right the way back at the start of the season and thinking about where expectations were, and then fast forwarding to where we're at now. What do you think's gone wrong?
I think there's been a number of things, haven't there? I hate to kind of like say bad luck has been part of it, but I genuinely think it has. I think we've had an enormous amount of bad luck with injuries this season. I think if we're all honest, Scott Lindsay was the wrong choice at the start of the season. And I think that transition from last season to this one just didn't go in the way that I think anyone thought it was going to go. I thought we would, everyone thought we would come out of the traps this season and storm the league, and we haven't done that. I think the lack of a goal scorer kind of early doors in the season has held us back quite a bit. Now Charlie's in, it's almost the opposite problem. So obviously Scott went, there was quite a delay to getting Jody in. I think it wasn't helpful that some of that happened. Well, it didn't it? Happened outside of the transfer window. So Jody's not really been able to kind of bring in anybody that he wants. So you've got a kind of situation where you had a team that was suited to the style of the previous manager trying to now play in the way that the next manager wants to, without, we're all set up wrong, if that makes sense. So now you've got Charlie kind of sat there. And I think the last game is kind of a pretty kind of typical kind of Swindon game this season. Me and my friend were texting each other during the game. And basically kind of, we go 2-0 up, and I text him and said, I was going all right, but bet we'll still balls this up. And lo and behold, 2 minutes later it goes 2-1, then 2-2. And then we're just, the text kind of become a bit more kind of mad as the game goes on. And you think, oh, for God's sake, how are we in a situation now where one player can score 4 goals, but we still don't get 3 points out of the game? I think that's pretty mad. And that's kind of down to not just one thing. I think it's a bunch of different things. Some of it's bad luck, some of it's injuries, some of it's the wrong players, I think, really. And I was looking at the league table before we came on, and we've still got 10 games and we've still got 30 points available this season, so we could still get up to 81 points, but I don't think anyone realistically thinks we're going to get there. So I think we are at the point really where we're probably going to have to write this season off. I think the worst thing that could happen for us now, if I'm honest, is to get in the playoffs and get to Wembley and then fail again, because I don't think I could take another Wembley failure after the previous
one, Chris, isn't it? Because I mean, clearly, us getting to Wembley from a business point of view is manna from heaven for the owner.
For sure.
The concern would be, with the condition of the current squad, what we've proven at various points this season that League Two has been, a proper battle for them. And I appreciate that the gap between League Two and League One has reduced somewhat, but it's going to take a significant investment in this squad, isn't it, for us to make an imprint on League One?
In the main,
look what's happened to Rovers and Forest Green. Rovers are probably pretty much on a par with us in terms of squad budget, I would say, and they are struggling in League One, like really, really struggling. Forest Green are kind of a bit further down, a bit further away, and no doubt we're going to see them again next season. And they've been absolutely pummeled in League One, haven't they? They're going to come straight back down again at the bottom. And I think if we're going to go up to League One, we have to do it properly. We have to have the tools in place, and hopefully, all the rumours about Charlie just seem to be kind of press talk. I don't buy it that he's going to go off to QPR or anything like that, and hopefully he'll be around next season. But if we get the players right in the close season, Jody stays, and we can kind of solidify that defence, and you've got Austin up front for the entire 9 months of next season, stays fit and carries on scoring goals, we'll be out of that league. I have no doubt about it.
Do we think as well that this season's been a massive learn? Like, we've conceded so many late goals. I mean, the goal on Saturday, the equaliser, you watch an eye follow, it goes out for a corner, and you literally know it's going in. Like, it's 93rd minute, you know it's going in.
Same as Carlisle.
Exactly same as Carlisle.
It's a case as well, like, we've got the main shining light at the minute is completely against what the whole season was planned out to be, or like we were fed, we've got a really young, talented squad. We're going down this route of, data-driven academy buy-in or whatever. And our main plus point this year has been a 33-year-old striker we brought back from Brisbane. It's like, I just really hope the next season, the people at the club, whether that's, our current technical director, a new one, the current chairman, whoever, whether that's Jody at the helm or, whoever's taken over, sees that this season hasn't worked, and you need to have that experience within a squad to be able to get out of this division, because it's an absolute cesspit.
I think the last few months has, obviously, or actually since January, really, has actually exposed that our plan just does not work. You cannot go with a younger team. You need that experience. Look, first half of the season, actually before the injury, Tom Clayton was very good when he was playing alongside an experienced player. And since he's come back with no one experienced to guide him along, he's been a shadow of the player he was first half of the season. Yeah, which goes to show that the experience is so crucial.
I mean, Tom's enjoying his first season in professional football. Like, there is going to be times where just mentally, it's going to be a big, big ask for him to play the amount of football that he's had. Like when he has those little psychological wobbles, that is perfectly human and natural, irrespective of, dogged a sportsman you might be. It is that experienced voice next to you, just kind of carrying you through that 2 or 3 games till you just sort of just get your head straight. I mean, it's things like, fatigue plays a role in that kind of stuff. He's played an awful lot of like men's football this year. Just someone being able to put their arm around him, just reassure him that everything you're doing is spot on. In fact, what's actually been asked of him is he's the one that's got to be putting his arm around people and saying, "Oh, you're doing the right thing." And why? Well, because he's captain the under-23 team, at Liverpool. But look, I want to bring Jack on for his debut. So, hello, Jack. It's lovely to hear from you, mate. Welcome to the show. Welcome for your debut. I've got an opening question for you, though. So, would you rather driving for promotion in League Two or struggling against relegation Forest Green style in League One?
I mean, wait, can you hear me? Is everything okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
I mean, personally, obviously now, I mean, I don't think if we would have got promoted last year anyway, I do believe we would have struggled, because in terms of budget at the moment, I do think we're on par with the likes of Forest Green and stuff like that. But if we would have kept our key players last year, I think it would have been a lot. I don't know. I just think it would have been a lot easier for us to maybe have that bounce off of the League Two promotion, and especially with the big increase in fans. I feel like we could have put at least a better stamp in League One than we did maybe the first time around in 2020 now, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is there that big a step up? Do we feel, guys, like, looking at, like, I mean, obviously the standard itself.
I think League One is the Championship 5 years ago now. Like, the step up is big. You're playing away at games, teams like Barnsley and Sheffield Wednesday and Wigan next year, Blackpool. It is a big step. Yeah. But I think, as Jack said there, like, I think the 2020 season, we kind of got fucked over by the pandemic. Like, I think without the pandemic, we probably keep Owen Doyle. We might be able to get Yates. Welland stays for the season. I think it's different.
Well, look, Cads has come on the show. He explained a lot about that season, didn't he? So there were people that pointed their fingers at, loan signings that didn't work and this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. But Paul Caddis's input was an interesting one, because it was like it really affected the senior pros in the squad, because for the first time in their career, they were like playing in these eerie stadiums where, like the crowds were kind of like, psychologically so important for them in terms of like drawing their motivation and pushing on. But he's kind of line on it was like what really went wrong that season, and I think if you look at Jonathan Grounds as a prime example, Jonathan Grounds goes to Exeter and becomes one of their sort of like star defenders in a promotion achieving team, whereas literally he was hapless at the back for us.
Shit spreads throughout an organisation too, and we had a bloke at the helm of our football club that had all but tapped out. He was willing to sort of send us into oblivion. He didn't give a flying fuck if we stayed up that division. Like, the whole Sheridan, honestly, that entire season, it rotted from the top. I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again. I really hope we don't.
I think with the one exception of one game at the end of the season.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, looking at, obviously, you go through that division, we're talking about it being a huge step up, all right? I'll take slight exception to that, because if you work your way up from the bottom of the league right the way through, Forest Green, that's not a big crowd. Cambridge isn't. Morecambe isn't. Accrington Stanley isn't. MK Dons isn't. The Pox will draw a big crowd because it's a big derby. Burton's not big, crowd-wise. Cheltenham's not big, albeit a local derby. Port Vale, all right, there will be a little bit of needle there between us and them infinitum because of events that happened in the playoffs that, went beyond, performance-related stuff. Lincoln's not big. Exeter, it's not that big. Fleetwood's not that big. Shrewsbury, not that big. Wickham, not that big. Peterborough, not really. It's only when you start when you break into the top sort of 11 at the moment. So Charlton, that'd be a decent crowd. Portsmouth would be decent. Bolton, Derby, Barnsley, Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday, Argyle. So, I mean, if you reflect on what League Two's looking like, I don't know, like, obviously we're big, Bradford are big, there's, I don't know, maybe, all right, so maybe there's like 5-6 clubs in League Two, whereas there's maybe more like 9 or 10 clubs in League One. But again, so I guess what we're saying is if you talk to players, they're saying the step up between League Two and League One isn't that big, but the crowd sizes are that big. But then Forest Green kind of spit in the face of that sentiment, don't they? So it's a bit like
we were only in those leagues. We were only in those leagues 10, 12 years ago. You know, in terms of playing against teams like Chef Wednesday, like Argyle. You know, I can remember going to all of those grounds, and it wasn't that long ago. And I think, you know, we kind of, as a bunch of fans, have slightly short memories, don't we? And I think we missed out on League One, seeing it as fans, because obviously we weren't allowed to go. But we've been stuck in this league a little while now, and I think we just, you know, the whole club needs to believe that it deserves to get up into League One and the Championship and wherever beyond that. But I think at the moment we've got a bit of a mentality as a fan base that we're stuck in League Two. We're never going to get out of it.
I think next season's so big for the football club, and
I agree.
Like, Clem needs to get a promotion now. I think next season, the goodwill that we'd started to accumulate at the start is probably dwindling a little bit. Swindon Town shouldn't be in League Two for 3 seasons in a row, let alone if we don't get promoted next year, it'll be 4 seasons in a row. I think that'll be a record even for me.
Joe, do you know what? I mean, so here's an interesting little litmus test. I don't know how reliable this is going to be, right? But bearing in mind, the geography of where I live is really far removed from SM1.
Yeah.
And I was in the pub about a week or so ago, and I was talking to a bunch of Palace fans. And there was 2 Charlton fans with them as well. And one of them kind of jokingly said, you know, because I said the same words you just said, like, really, our club has got no business being in League Two. One of the fans turned around at me and said, "You're living in the past, hand or hand, like living in the past." Because he was like, you know what, you know, your club doesn't pull the kind of crowds and doesn't have the kind of scale that is required to kind of, you know, be a Championship football club anymore. You just don't. And that was interesting. That was from a Palace fan.
Leeds didn't have the sort of crowds they get now when they're in the Championship. They had about 3,000 fans rocking up in Ellen Road.
You could also consider about how, like, Reading are still in the Championship and they're getting, what, like 7 to 8K now? When they used to get in, when they were pushing for Premier League promotion, they were getting pretty much nearly full Majeski Stadium. But now...
Yeah, it's because they can't get out of their houses to the games anymore because they're taking all their shoes off and they've lost all their shoes.
Oh, God, yeah.
Now, stand us up, Joe. Let's not indulge that ridiculous celebration. But I guess, look, the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, is there an element of, you know, because look, the problem you've got is you've got a generation of supporters like me and Chris. I'm going to throw you in this hat as well, but we grew up in an era, or like the golden era, Swindon Town golden era, where we had 3 tracksuit managers on the bounce that just took us to the mountaintop. And we got to the top, we looked over, we took one step over the other side, and it was a disaster. Now, interestingly enough, somebody actually said to me, I remember that year, it's kind of what I'm sort of talking about with in terms of our expectations, because I remember vividly a Swindon Town fan turning to me on the last game of the season and literally, excuse my French, he said, "Thank fuck that's finished." He was like, "I've not enjoyed this season at all." He said, "Yeah, it's been nice going to all these grounds." He said, "But it's not fun seeing your team getting dicked every week." And I remember that verbatim. And it completely changed my attitude towards, like, relegation. And then but the trouble was, as time wore on, I heard that same sentiment being said as we tumbled down the leagues. So when we became the whipping boys of the Championship, when we really started running out of, you know, where the money really did start drying up, people at the county ground were saying, it's going to be nice actually playing in what is now League One. Like, we'll win a few games, that'll make a nice change. And then when we went into League Two, people said the same kind of things, and it's sort of really depressing. But my expectations are still... I remember when it was standard for Swindon Town to be in the upper echelons of the Championship. I think if you're a younger supporter and you've not been part of that golden era, I can understand why you're getting stuck in a League Two mentality and getting really frustrated and negative about it. I mean, Jack, you're obviously a younger supporter. What's your take? Do you feel like that we are just stuck in this black hole that is League Two, or do you still have aspirations that we should be and could get to the Championship?
I think realistically, like, I mean, my aspirations for for this season were high. Like, you know, I was expecting us to have a season like last, but considering, you know, I pretty much thought that this season, the season we're having now, would have been the season we're having last year, where we get in maybe a couple more inexperienced players and train them up for the main promotion push, which I thought would be this year. But considering now that, you know, we're having such a diabolical season where we've had to have a massive, well, I wouldn't say diabolical, not ideal. You know, I just feel at the moment that, you know, I don't really know where the higher ups in the club, where their head's at. Because realistically, people have been calling for Sandro's head for a long time now. And I would have thought that maybe some movement in the higher ups in the club, or even just some kind of communication towards the fans on what is predicted and what is expected.
But to you, Jack, the question to you was, Swindon Town as an entity, as a football club, Swindon Town to you as a supporter, do you realistically believe that we can get back to being an established championship side that could one day be challenging again for the top flight? I mean, even me saying it, I'm finding myself laughing at the notion. Like, that's how battered my expectations have been. But as a younger supporter, do you feel that that is a realistic expectation, or do you feel like, actually, do you know what, just bouncing between the upper echelons of League Two and the middle of League One's going to be enough for you? Like, what is the psyche of a young supporter like yourself? That, because you tweeted me about a week ago, you were clearly ragged off, and rightly so, with the current scenario. So where's your longer term expectation for us, realistically speaking?
I mean, my kind of aspiration is, you know, I mainly, the main times I got into Swindon was when I was younger and we were pushing promotion in League One. So I've always been kind of had that thought in my mind that we should be really pushing for that, you know, that championship level football, where we should be in and amongst the big lot in League One, rather than down here in puny little League Two.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's a great shout, actually, because I was just, when I was going through that league, if you look at the top, let's go through that top 10 again. Plymouth Argyle, they're not gargantuanly larger than us. Sheffield Wednesday are a complete anomaly. Wednesday should never, ever have been allowed to tumble out of the Premier League, in my opinion. I think Wednesday are a huge football club. Ipswich are another one. Ipswich are a huge football club. But yet, weirdly, when you go to Ipswich, they've got the same kind of, I don't know, it's the same kind of vibe as Swindon for me when you go to Ipswich, in terms of where the stadium is. The difference is we haven't got the European football history that Ipswich have got. But, you know, Barnsley, I mean, I remember days when we would be going out to Oakwell and we'd be boxing with them on an even footing. Derby County, huge football club. Bolton Wanderers, huge football club. But again, two football clubs that during my tenure as a Swindon Town fan, we would regularly beat. Both of those clubs have had differing sort of levels of success, having moved to state-of-the-art stadia. But then when you start moving out the top six, Peterborough, we're a bigger club than Peterborough. Wycombe Wanderers, we're a bigger club than Wycombe. You start Portsmouth are a huge football club, but again, another club that we regularly beat and should regularly expect to beat. And you get down to 11th, and it's Charlton Athletic. So I'm with you, Jack, in that respect. That I don't look at that kind of top 10 in League One and go like, actually, we would look out a place there. I wonder how much we've allowed ourselves to sort of, I don't know. I mean, listen, money talks at the end of the day, doesn't it? The thing is, in order to be in that top 10, irrespective of how big our stands are and how big a crowds we can pull, there are still people putting significant sums of money into those football clubs, aren't there? And I think, I don't know. Listen,
I think Argyle's a really interesting one, Hannah's, as a club that were in a real mess about 4 or 5 years ago, like a real mess, in a similar way to Swindon when Lee Power was in his kind of final months, and it's taken them a while to kind of sort themselves out. So I do think we kind of need a little bit of perspective here as well. You know, Clem's never owned a football club before. Rob's never been a chief executive of a football club before, and it's going to take them a little while to kind of work out, in the same way as it did with Plymouth, to work out how to do it in the best way. I'm not sure the kind of, the director of football kind of model that we seem to have at the minute works brilliantly.
The thing is,
But
if we do have a director of football, we need it to be a football man rather than a bookie.
Yeah, I agree.
I was going to say,
completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. But I think, look at the wreckage successive directors of football have had at places like Everton, and how much it's kind of ruined the squad. When you try and have the consistency of a director of football there that appoints the manager, for me, it doesn't work. I think if you have a manager, they're in charge of the recruitment, they're in charge of who comes into the club, and they bring people in who suit their style of play. And I don't think it's personally, for me, you don't you don't retain the style of play. You bring the players in to do a job in the circumstances you're in at that time. And we're in League Two. We need players that can play in League Two and get us out of that club. And League Two is a very physical league where the ball flies over your head quite a lot. And having Charlie in, I think, has kind of really helped us to kind of, at least stabilise things at the minute. But I think we need a bit of perspective sometimes as well. We need to give Clem time and just remember what he's done as well. And Plymouth went through a quite similar kind of process where they cleared off a lot of the debt. And I think once we get to the point where that's gone and we own the stadium's being hopefully rebuilt in the future, I think we'll be in a much better place. But I think it's going to take a bit of patience. So I think we were in a considerable mess 2 years ago.
I think we've also got that, though, is we've got people behind the scenes who aren't football people, and I think that's hindering us quite a lot. Whereas as a club, from where we were, coming from the Lee Power era, we needed football people to do the football side and bring us football. And we've got people in there who've got no experience in football, and I think this year it's just been exposed.
I'll tell you what, Chris, what's really interesting in that respect is that you've seen Clem being flanked by Craig Moore. No, hang on. It's not Craig Moore, is it? It's the other ex-Rangers Moore. Is it Craig Moore?
No, it is Craig Moore, mate.
It is Craig Moore. So you're seeing someone like Craig Moore who's operated at the very, very top of Scottish football. Obviously, people might go, Scottish football, oh, wow. But there's Scottish football, and then there's playing for Glasgow Rangers at a point where Glasgow Rangers were big shakes in European football.
He's played for World Cup, to be fair.
Yeah, and he's got significant experience as a football agent as well. So I think if you wanted an indication that Clem is reaching out to football people, football thinkers, and people that probably, obviously, he's a fellow Aussie, someone that he can kind of relate to, he can reach in, he can trust. Craig Moore's made that journey from Australia to the UK and then carved a career out for himself. So I think there'd be a lot of empathy there. So I think that's certainly a decent indication. But look, we've had an absolute stack. I want to make sure we get as many of these listener point of views explored as we possibly can. We're having a stack of tweets and they're flying in as I'm speaking. So first up, Fools Rush In. Good evening, gentlemen. They've tweeted, fairly generic, but what's gone wrong? Everything that can go wrong in their mind. It's a shambles on and off the pitch. Kind of taps into what we're saying. Hank's tweeted, hello, Hank. Good evening to you. Says, in my opinion, promotion was wanted by Clem, but Sandro held us back by appointing a cheap coach and letting crucial players go in the summer. Didn't build on what we had and got worse replacements, letting crucial players go in January. Also taking 4 weeks to get both coaches in. Indeed, Hank. I mean, again,
the January window literally encapsulates that is Swindon's season in one day, at least on deadline day. Like the amount of bandages we were wrapping across the transfer window within the last 24 hours. I mean, Joe Tomlinson, that's great. Like, he's a fantastic football player at this level. He's a Swindon Town fan, really popular figure. But then you've got players like Dylan Kadji being brought in and then literally being told the day after at a press conference that he was our third choice. Like, what the fuck?
Well, Claire's also tweeted, good evening, Claire. And Claire has said, think this season is due to a number of reasons and not one particular area. Change of coaches, injuries and other clubs' recruitment. Turnover of our own players, the target aims for our season possibly moving and changing over that period as well. I mean, it's a very good point. Because, Sandro took a lot of heat, didn't he, when he gave that kind of now famous interview and the P word didn't get mentioned at all. And then within a matter of hours after that interview, Rob Angus was out on, kind of doing a firefighting job, where he was saying sort of promotion twice in every sentence. So I think, that could just be, just an error of judgment, or I think Sandro tried to explain at the time it was so obvious a thing, promotion for Swindon Town, that it didn't need mentioning. But Swindon Town fans weren't really buying that, were they, at the time? Steve Coleman's tweeted, "Hello, Steve. Good evening to you, mate." Steve said, "What's gone wrong, in my honest opinion, is quality of player. Look at who Ben Chorley bought in and what Sandro has bought in. The quality has gone down, in my opinion."
Ben Chorley brought players in under embargo too.
Yeah, he did. But, I mean, okay, I want to come on and talk about the notion of a free hit in a minute, but we just keep our powder dry while I rattle through a few more of these. So Steve tweeted halfway through Hank's sort of 2 replies. So Hank's second part of the tweet said, "Cost us massively recruiting players early in both windows, and to build, fans have lost faith in the club by awful PR and on and off the field performances. The club has to sort this out by sacking Sandro and getting more experienced players and staff." Again, equally, Falls Rush In added to their earlier tweet by saying, "We're going backwards. We've been fed a dream and it's delivered dross and failure." Okay, what else we got here? Right, bear with me. Yeah, Holly's just following up with on Claire's tweet saying, "A great summary. A huge amount of change has happened." So where are we? MST's tweeted. MST, always a pleasure to see your wonderful input, and there's quite a lot of it here. It says, "Gone wrong, easier to say what has gone well. Number 1, enough shirts in the shop. Number 2, lots of sponsors. Number 3, buying the ground. Number 4, the pox are near the drop. Interestingly, our key players last season haven't really done much this season. Last season was so special. Footballing gods were smiling down on us. When was the last time we played Bristol City or Reading? Reading have the 20th highest attendance this year, 13,000. Lots of clubs on the verge of administration in the Championship. So again, be careful what you wish for. But Sheffield United have switched off the heating and have stopped buying paint. Only cup runs is keeping the club solvent. Perhaps the Championship isn't such a good thing. Not bothered about the league. All MST wants is decent football, competitive team, local derbies, good away support, and a good atmosphere." I mean, look, guys, it makes a really compelling point there, doesn't he? I said earlier in the show, didn't I, when I was talking about the women's team, and we still have the coaching guys on and various players from the women's squad, that for me, I don't honestly believe that seeing trophies paraded around a pitch at Swindon Town is like absolutely critical to my supporting experience. But I'll tell you what is critical. I grew up on watching a really cavalier style of football, played by decent technicians, where we were challenging, we were able to, for example, take 2010, we were able to go to Leeds, beat them 3-0, but then also do the same to them at our patch. They still went on and got promoted that year. We didn't, but that felt like a Swindon Town season to me. It's kind of what MST's saying in a nutshell, isn't it, guys?
It is, though. It's like, Mark, you're pretty much the same age as me. So we pretty much followed the whole Swindon Town thing at the same time. And it's funny, but going back to that era, that's what we were like. But now it's been this season. I think the word more than anything else I would say about this season has been frustrating, because I don't necessarily think that all of the players brought in have been poor. I just think that you can't just bring in the youngsters. If we brought in a couple of sort of a Darren Prattley type or a big Carter centre half type, would have made such a massive difference. But we've just, I think, a lack of experience behind the scenes has hindered us just as much as it has on the pitch.
The way to look at it as well, the players that we brought in this season have had a year of League Two football. I was going to say earlier on, I think Tom Clayton looks like a League Two player now already. I won't say League Two player. I think that's a bit, that's not great on a player as a professional. But They look like EFL players. I think Tom Clayton looks like a Football League player. He looks like a men's player.
I would say though, Joe, first half of the season, when he was playing alongside Angus MacDonald, who would have been talking to him and guiding him through, he looked so much better than he does now when he's got no one to guide him. And he's not an experienced player. He needs someone to look after him, and he's not got that.
No, I agree.
And he looks a weaker player because of that.
We've got players in this squad now that we can use next season. You know, we need to add to the squad. That goes without saying. We need to add players of Charlie Austin's ilk. We don't know whether or not Johnny Williams will be here next year. We hope he is, or if he's not, we need to replace him. We still need to replace Ben Gladwin. We still need to replace maybe Louis Reed. If McEachran sticks around, then that would be amazing, because obviously he's left a really good mark. It's a shame he's injured now. We've got like Jake Wakelin. He's a good squad player to have next year. Does he start every game next season? I don't know, but we've got a decent squad. We need to build on it though. We've got bodies going out this season. We know there are people out of contracts. You've got your Frenchie's going to retire. We'll need a goalkeeper. We've got a little bit of canvas space to paint some pictures. We need to use it. We need to get Charlie Austin to sign a deal, whether or not, as Chris said, the bits he's been saying in the media, maybe that's been over-egged and maybe it's hype building, or it worries me if QPR go down. Like, if QPR go down to League One, does he see that as a massive opportunity? Do they come back and say, Charlie, look, we need your help. You're doing it in League Two. Can you come and do it in League One for us? I'd like to think the way he's talking about Clem and the thanks that he's giving him on the radio last night.
Joe, I'll tell you something about Charlie. I honestly don't believe. I think the nature of Charlie's departure first time around left such a psychological mark on him. He wouldn't want to repeat the same mistakes. I don't think Charlie would want to leave the Swindon Town fans in the lurch. Hand on heart.
I'd like to think so too, mate.
Well, we've spoken to him directly. You've spoken about that on the show, that, rights and wrongs of how he went. I mean, he talked at the time about him and his agent. They were just kids. They didn't really know what they were doing, and the nature of how he kind of felt that he threw all of the good wishes towards him from Swindon fans back in their faces. I think if Charlie was to leave off the back of this season, with the club having given him and Clem having given him such a big opportunity, I appreciate there's clearly been things around the club that he's not, aren't going to be ideal to him, but I cannot see Charlie wanting to repeat that episode again. I just can't.
Yeah, he's had 3 returns to QPR, so they can just fuck off.
I mean, listen, he's got the same emotional pull at QPR. I think if there is a club that he might leave Swindon for, that would probably, put it this way, I wouldn't say it would soften the blow, but if Charlie left Swindon Town for QPR, I'd be a little bit more understanding. Whereas if he left us for Bristol Rovers, there'd be some bloody big conversations to be had.
Yeah.
But I genuinely don't believe. I think Charlie's at that stage of his career where Swindon is a longer play for him. I hand on heart believe that Swindon is a longer play for him. But here's the other question for you, just sort of being a little bit provocative here. And we talked about finances, and MST made some really interesting points there about how many of the sort of championship clubs are pretty much insolvent. And that, Sheffield Wednesday's cup run is allegedly, the thing that is keeping them afloat. We need to be careful what we wish for a bit here with our new owner, don't we? Because the interesting thing that came out this week, various sort of, I always listen with great enthusiasm to the Low Strangers. I always enjoy Terry and Rich's input, and I listen with real interest as to how they summarise Clem. And it's very much, I think, in keeping with the way I feel, which is, fundamentally, I've stood at conversations with Clem, shook his hand, looked him in the eye, asked him some really pointed business questions. And the responses that I got back fill me with reassurance that actually here is an individual that is a good guy, is passionate about our football club, wants our football club to move forward, and is doing the best with the tools at his disposal to tackle some of the issues that clearly the club have got. I think there's clearly going to be much bigger stories to, what we know publicly about what's going on with our football club. But having been involved with the club as our primary shirt sponsor during the Andrew Fitton era and seen the wheels come off then, I've got to stress, particularly to our kind of younger fans that might be kind of getting maybe a bit of itchy feet, I've got to stress, like, that's not a position I want to find ourselves back in a hurry. Like, that was literally like, I mean, we experienced it. I don't mean that. I mean, I hope I'm not sounding condescending, because we all experienced sort of 2 summers ago where we were literally on the precipice looking over. But it's like, we need to be very, very careful here that, you know, we're not burning our bridges with our owner.
I don't think anyone is burning any bridges with Clem. I think what I said earlier on about us needing promotion next season, I think it's probably more from a standpoint of Swindon Town shouldn't be in League Two for 4 years in a row. I'm pretty sure it'd be the first time in my lifetime supporting the club. It's just not something that I've experienced before. I think this season he's maybe listened to the wrong people, or, you know, we've gone from having Ben Chorley, who built a really, really good squad on a shoestring budget, using his contacts in the game, to a different approach. Now that approach, you know, for whatever reason, hasn't worked out. Hopefully, he's learned something from it. Clem isn't a football like man. He'd probably admit that himself. He loves the football club. He got into the game, in the English game, maybe 5-10 years ago. He was introduced to Swindon Town, and he felt a duty of care to buy us when we were in such a way. And he's done great things for us, you know, buying the ground with the trust and the help from the Nigel Eady Foundation. Ultimately, what he's done off the pitch for the football club is immeasurable. It's just that final little piece of the puzzle on the pitch, getting it right, getting promotion. I think, even if, honestly, if he gets the stadium to within the club's ownership, he gets the club promoted and was to sell, maybe, I mean, genuinely, can you give me a better ownership tenure, really, other than promotion to the Premier League?
Look, I'll tell you an interesting story, all right? So about 10, 15 years ago, just as AC Milan started taking a nosedive, I've been invited to the San Siro as a guest of the wonderful white goods firm Indesit, right? Had a conversation with their head of sponsorship. But it was a really interesting one that sort of ever so slightly adjusted my attitude towards finances and ownership and things like this. And I was, for whatever reason, I was very much tuned into the whole sponsorship world at that time, and I was enthusing about the fact that, you know, that Milan were quite clearly at the time. I had a conversation with one of their directors. They were talking about the fact that they were trying to, you know, looking at ways of making sure that the club wasn't just sort of purely reliant on Berlusconi's money and this weird airy-fairy conversation, a million miles away from where Swindon Town is at. And the chap from Indesit turned to me and he said, "You know what, Mark?" He said, "At the end of the day, football fans don't give a monkeys about finances. You know, we pretend we do. But he said, fundamentally, we just don't care. Like, what we care about is what we see on the park, and, you know, it's the winning, it's the, you know, being competitive. Is, you know, certainly AC Milan level is much more tuned into seeing the trophies. You know, it's clearly a very, very different level of expectation to us. But it was a really, really interesting point, I thought, that was made at the time, which was, well, you know, I don't know. I think just reflecting on, obviously, our new owner's like in now. It's at the end of his sort of second full season. Do we really care? Well, actually, we do kind of at the moment, don't we? Because, you know, we're on the verge of owning our own ground. Now, the finances of that aren't clearly coming from Clem. They're coming from the actual purchase of the stadium, is coming from the Eady Trust. But you don't believe that the Edys were going to invest. I don't believe the Edys would have invested in the club if Clem hadn't taken on so much of the club debt and accepted a lot of that as like 0% loans, which we've been talking about. You know, there's no urgency to pay those back. So it's like we've got the finances in check. So the Edys felt comfortable enough, the Eady Trust felt comfortable enough to release the funds to now buy the stadium. So I am sort of interested in the finances, Joe, at the moment, if you know where I'm coming from. But at the same time, I wonder, like, whether I don't know, is that an age thing? I mean, Jack, I'll bring you back in. Do you give a monkeys about the financial situation and the fact that we've got an owner that's cleared a load of the debts? Do you really care, Jack?
I mean, obviously, it's a massive thing, considering, you know, when power obviously was eventually kind of booted away. Obviously, the main issue with the club was how much debt we were in. You know, the EFL were watching over us and stuff like that. I feel like now, considering Clem has cleared the debts, we've bought the stadium, I feel like the club is in a better position. But on the pitch, however, it's a very different story. And have we sacrificed the on the pitch performance to kind of obviously heal and fix up the club, despite obviously last season's daydream of a season.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, how do you? I mean, I'll just bounce that back to the panel. Right? How do you feel about it? I mean, I don't. Again, I don't want to keep going round and round and round in circles here, but I can't help my brain immediately listening to Jack speaking. There goes back to the conversation we were having earlier, where let's just say Clem does throw a load of money at it. We assemble a squad that gets us out of League Two, but then we find ourselves right at the bottom of League One, and there's no forward progression. We've just spent a load more money. I guess what I'm trying to say is, do we not feel that is Clem maybe going? Are we being a little bit harsh here? Is he maybe going, hang on a minute, last season was a free hit, and as a consequence, we played with no fear, and there was no pressure, and that's why it was so successful. This season, there is that little bit more pressure. We've not performed brilliantly against that pressure, but you know what? It's still part of a kind of gradual build. They've tried things this year behind the scenes that clearly haven't worked, in the opinion of football fans. But that then gives us another opportunity to build and go again. And we've still got, we talked about the nucleus of our squad. I mean, everyone's been pretty outspoken about how poor the squad is. But then, Joe, we've had a conversation earlier saying, well, hang on, we've got the basis of an all right squad here. We just need an experienced spine running through it. Seems to be the kind of vibe. So,
mate, honestly, if we had a decent January window, I think if we kept hold of your likes of Gladwin, Reed, right, I don't know where the story with Angus was, we needed to replace him with a like-for-like experienced centre back. If we played January right, genuinely, I think we'd be in the playoffs right now.
I'll tell you what worried me.
Fine lines.
So we talk about recruitment, right? So we let Angus go.
Yeah.
And then it became quite clear that our transfer target in January was Malachi Walcott.
Yeah.
Which was another kid. That's kind of that's when, for me, alarm bells really started ringing, because I remember on deadline day, I was like, well, all right, you let Angus go. If you bring in a Mariappa type, and then you've got a Malachi Walcott, just in case Mariappa breaks down with injury, or because Mariappa can't play a 90 minutes, or then I'm accepting of that.
But we've also let our marquee signing from the summer go to Aberdeen on a free. We've ripped up his contract, and he's gone for free. And we've not replaced him even for free. Like, it doesn't make sense. That whole situation just smells a little bit.
I think even moving on to the free agent market, there is the likes of, I mean, I don't know what his situation is now, but even at the time there was the likes of Andre Wisdom, who's worked with Morris in the past, who was unattached, I believe, or still is. And I don't know why we haven't really gone in, all in for him, considering he's got very good levels of experience.
Yeah, I mean, you had Tyler Blackett too. Tyler Blackett's obviously gone to Rotherham now, so whether or not he'd have come down to League Two, who knows? But as Jack says, there were definitely options available. It's just, and appointing Jody as late as we did into the window, when he clearly was tied up. Like, he was at the Gillingham game, which was mid-January. It took so long to get it done. We bring him in on deadline day, and then we go, right, here you go, mate. You got 8 hours. Fucking crack on, son.
Mm. I think that one of the key things there as well is we see that from the January window on, our three biggest key signings, are completely out of our apparent recruitment method. Charlie Austin, Tom Brewitt, and George McEachran. They weren't within that thing, and they were certainly probably three of our best signings of the season. So, that recruitment method is just bollocks.
Well, again, sorry.
No, not at all, Jack. Listen, someone's just tweeted another really, really interesting point. In relation to, so Jason's just tweeting. I'll read Jason's tweet in a sec about season tickets, but Jason's just described the season ticket situation as being a bit of a fiasco, and he raises a really interesting point about the impact on recruitment next year with financial fair play, because in Jason's opinion, the way that season tickets have been approached so far this season, along with some of the other things that have happened, some of which we've talked about already on the show, he's of the opinion that may well impact on season ticket sales. And he doesn't believe that we've got any chance of getting near 6,000. So I'll read that shortly. But I mean, some of the replies to the club's comms on social media this week in relation to season tickets has been really, really quite concerning. So take, for example, so the club put out the season ticket promo for this season, and then the competitive pricing of it and the early birds nature of it and so on and such like. And full disclosure here, I've renewed my season tickets for next season, and I'll tell you about my psyche for doing that shortly. But I've just dropped significant coin on the club, right? So I really am putting my money where my mouth is when I say this. But Jamie Gibbo tweeted he's not interested in renewing his season tickets until SDM is sacked. Paddy Stavros has tweeted a picture of Samuel Jackson staring with wild eyes, quite clearly in a dissenting manner. And another picture saying, hell no. Hank has said, will there be a finance option? Will Sandro be in charge for next season? Sorf has just said no. Christine has said, Sandro's still at the club. If so, I'll pass. Andy Richardson, sack D. Michele, then we talk. Leon, not until there's a finance option. Wesley, no finance option. Tom Claxton, bit of a piss take to only have the finance option after the early bird finishes. James, realistically, the club should be extending the early bird window to allow fans to buy/renew when all payment options are available and working correctly, which doesn't seem to be the case at present. Joe Rogers said, on the basis that SDM is still in situ and there is no payment plan option, I'm afraid you've lost 2 season ticket holders from my family. So, okay, we talked about sample sizes earlier, and clearly that's way lower than, say, a minimum sample size of 50, let's say. However, there's a lot of that, and there's been a lot of that on socials this week. I mean, how are we feeling? Like I said, for me, I've renewed my season tickets for next season. From my perspective, when I renewed them, I turned to my kids, and my gut reaction was it would be so Swindon that if I didn't renew my season tickets next season, it would be so Swindon that we go and storm the league. And I said, I've got to renew my season ticket. And it was like that blind faith that led me to do it. But you can see, like, amongst all of those fans, there's some fairly consistent themes, aren't there, guys, in relation to what it's going to take to renew season tickets. And a couple of those people, a couple of those names we will recognise, those are long-standing season ticket holders that are making some pretty hefty demands of the club, aren't they?
It's definitely poor that the finance option's not there.
Mm.
That doesn't and to have it in place after the early bird window closes, that's not good. And I think that's something that needs to be listened to.
Again, like Chris, the club's a bit. I mean, they've been very open about this. We had this conversation with them. Yeah, they're dealing with historical issues, aren't they? In terms, of,
they are,
and the club's been hamstrung by sort of things that are beyond Clem and Rob's control here.
It's funny, isn't it? Because last season there were obviously still a bunch of issues renewing season tickets, and at one point they were only accepting cash, weren't they? I seem to remember, or bank transfers, and everyone kind of felt okay with that at the time, because there was obviously that Clem had just taken over from Lee, and the club was in a mess. And I think we've almost got the kind of reverse problem now, haven't we? That everyone's dissatisfied with what's going on the pitch, and then taking it out on the season ticket kind of renewal stuff, aren't they? So it's a bit of a funny one.
The thing is, Chris, the problem that we've got, right? Let's just call it as it is. We all want our club to progress. Our club's going to progress a lot quicker if we are buying season tickets. If for whatever reason we're going to choose to do this sort of silent protest and not renew season tickets, we're actually hurting the objective that we want from our club.
It's counterproductive. It's counterproductive.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is completely, because you buy, the season ticket numbers go up when the club does well on the pitch, but they won't go up unless they do well on the pitch, because you need the money from the season tickets. It's really interesting. I'm picking up on something that Joe said earlier about the last time Swindon were in the 4th tier for a lengthy period of time. I actually just looked it up, and it's really interesting. When it happened, it was 82 to 88. And we all know what happened after that. And I know, obviously, 1990 and kind of all the problems there, but it was the prelude to a hugely successful period in Swindon's history. And, if it would be so Swindon, wouldn't it, for us to be sitting here moaning on a Wednesday night in the middle of whatever month we're in, March, saying that all hope is lost, for us to completely go and storm the league next season and then carry on going. But I think we the club almost needs to kind of go from a dark place, doesn't it, to achieve success. And I think we need to remember all of those bad periods that have happened over the past 10 years, and even further back, to be perfectly honest, than that. I mean, who remembers back to the period when Willie Carson was chairman, and oh God, what was his blooming name? That was the co-owner at the time, with Seton Wills. But that period was in particularly bad. And then there was obviously the Andrew Black period and all of the kind of stuff that happened after that. So we've not had it good for a long time. And I think that frustration is starting to kind of build, because we were kind of, we saw the dream, didn't we, last season, and cruelly snatched away at Vale Park. But
I think as well, I'll tell you something, guys. I mean, just as a if you take a look at the league table now, right, here's an interesting frame of reference for you. So I remember in 1990-91, when Hoddle first joined the club, I remember being stood in the Shrivenham Road and having some guy stood next to me shouting, "You don't know what you're doing, Hoddle." Like literally towards as we were coming towards the end of that season. I'll never forget that. And I was just like, bloody hell, okay. And at the time I was still learning myself about, football and tactics and so on and such like. The following season, we were kind of there, but not quite. And obviously we had all our goals snatched away from us when we had to sell Duncan Shearer. I'm wondering, again, it would be very Swindon Town if this season ends up being a version of what that season was. And the following season, with a few key additions around the squad, we end up with a side that can absolutely like mix it with the best of them. The
one thing I would say as well, Hannah, is just linking back to the season ticket point. Like, we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis that I don't think anyone here has ever experienced. Yeah. And ticket prices have gone up. So ticket prices originally they're a big commitment anyway. It's a lot of money to a lot of people. I certainly haven't got the amount of money to drop 300 odd quid and not feel the burn of it for at least a month.
Yeah, sure. Oh, mate, listen, trust me.
If you're not seeing it on the pitch, people ultimately, if they're not being entertained by it, they've got every right to just go, you know what, I can't afford it, I'll pay when I can go.
Yeah. Oh, mate, trust me, we're in exactly the same boat. But I've got to be honest with you, it was... we sat and had a conversation about it. My wife is the family exchequer, and she was kind of saying to me, well, can't you just pick and choose your games? I'm like, well, obviously not, because we do a fair bit around the club now on match day, so I'm going to be there anyway every week. And it's like, if I then decide not to buy a season ticket, then we've got this other problem, which is the £27 walk-up ticket, which is incredibly steep for League Two. So I was like, my only real option here is to buy a season ticket. Like, it's, and like I said, coupled with the emotional reaction, where I was kind of, like I said, I just bought it because I said it would be the most Swindon-y thing. We're going to storm next season.
I was going to mention, Hannah's, the £27 walk-up charge as well. I totally get the club's perspective that their costs have gone up as well. But I think Swindon probably, how many season ticket holders do we have? Like 3,000-4,000, something like that, and the rest of the crowd is made up by people who pick and choose games, and I fear that will go down next season. And I wonder, again, we're kind of talking about that kind of catch-22 with buying season tickets and then having success, whether that's going to affect it as well next season. Because it is a steep charge, that, and as someone who, full disclosure here, I've never had a Swindon season ticket in the God knows how many years I've been going to see them, since the 1980s. I've never had one because I've never been in Swindon long enough to actually kind of gain any benefit out of it. But that is going to make me think twice next season about how many games I can go to, because that cost, and then when you think about the petrol to drive there, the cost of parking, which undoubtedly Swindon Borough Council will put that up next season, and all the kind of parking operators around the ground will as well. And then you chuck, chips on top of that for the kid or whatever. It's becoming a ludicrous amount of money.
Yeah, Chris, and you're not the only one saying those kind of things that's tweeting in tonight either. So Anthony's tweeted, Anthony Gingell, hello Anthony, he said, I would say at the start of the season that promotion even via the playoffs should be the aim. The way it is now, I'll take a stable club with foundations to go next season. With the right recruitment of players under Jody, I think we could have some fun. Or is that still hope in brackets? Jason's agreeing with you, Chris. It was 82-86. Lou Macari's Red and White Army Storm Division 4. Aaron, yeah, mate, listen, Aaron's pulling me up on my choice of language. So he said, Hannah's not sure it's a silent protest. Everyone's being pretty vocal as to why they won't renew. Like many, I left money in the club and I didn't seek a refund as we put faith and trust in the regime. They failed in many ways this season. There's a lot of anger in Aaron's tweet, and you can feel it. And yeah, Aaron, listen, pulling myself up on my language, you're right. It's not a silent protest, and I certainly don't mean to be playing it down either. But to the point that we went on to expand on, kind of feels like a vicious cycle. Like if we don't renew, we're only kind of making things even more miserable for ourselves next season. Hanks followed up with, no finance options is shocking. With the current climate, people can't afford that sort of money up front. I need that option as I have a newborn on the way. Jason said incorrect again, Chris. 6.5K season tickets this season. That will drop below 5K and probably a lot less. Yeah, interesting.
Thanks. That's interesting, and I think that's probably a bit of a kind of measure, isn't it, of the damage that potentially hiking season ticket costs will do to next season. But it'd be interesting to see. And all we can hope is that somehow or other people can find the money and it doesn't do too much damage. And I'm sure Clem and Rob will have thought about that, because you put the price up and you drop the season ticket numbers. There's kind of a balance there, isn't there, I guess, of how much money do you drop by people dropping season tickets by putting them up. So where's that fine kind of balance to kind of maintain the money, I guess.
Well, MST has just DM'd saying, look, I bought a season ticket for 2021-22 because I wanted to save the club. I bought a season ticket this season and I feel shortchanged, to be honest. Probably will renew, but I'm holding off. I want to see some signings before I commit. And that's a really interesting point. I mean, Joe, Chris, it'd be interesting your thoughts, and Jack, on this. And indeed yourself, Chris. What clearly there's 30 points left to play for. We've got 10 games left this season. There's a lot riding on these 10 games, isn't there? Because even if, let's say, we don't beat Stockport on Saturday, the kind of playoff dream you would imagine Saturday is almost like a bloody 12-pointer in that respect. But even if the playoff dream isn't quite there, it's so important that the fans are given some entertainment through to the end of the season, isn't it? Because I really do I'm starting to feel like, season tickets are intrinsically linked with, that, like it's going to, that sense of hope that could be generated in the remaining games.
Oh, it is that, and as well, and it's a tricky one as well, because we've got some very intriguing young players that I wouldn't mind seeing given a go. So if we sort of get to the stage where playoffs are out of the question, I'd love to see Kano or Anton. Let's call him Anton because I'm not going to be able to pronounce this. Yeah. I'd love to see them just have a look at them, what they're like in men's football. Because but we've got some of those as well, but it's the whole thing is what to do is if it goes out there, then it's got to the stage where I think you need to say to Jody, right, recruitment is on you next year. Who do you want? What not? Have a look at the players the back end of this year and decide who you want to stay and who you want to go.
So look, Aaron's making another really interesting point on his tweet. Aaron's saying it's March. What are we being shown, stroke sold, that gives us faith next season is going to be completely different? So literally what we're saying now, Aaron, right? You know, Aaron's saying as far as he can see, it's just an increase in prices and that's all. Start getting the big players tied down for next season, or are we going to wait until June, July again? Foul to prepare to foul. Aaron, listen, I think you're nailing it, mate. There's some big names that I think will be critical to kind of just making sure you're keeping the fans on board. I think it's people want to know that Charlie Austin is going to be here next season. Hepburn Murphy, George McEachran. You know, these are players where you're immediately going, yeah, right, I can see a side being built around them. Hopefully, Saidu Khan has learned from some of the disciplinary issues that he's experienced next year. Hopefully, you can get him extended because when he's on top of his game, there's definitely a player there. And then you add 3 or 4 decent signings with a bit of experience in the summer. But I think at the moment, the challenge is there's some players there. I mean, like, you know, Willow's another example. I think people are starting to get to a stage where they're starting to feel we're not going to see Johnny Williams next season. And has he really been the same player since the January transfer window? But I think I'm kind of with you, Aaron. I think the club have got to start actually just demonstrating, well, hang on a minute. You know, we understand that these players are huge, you know, huge for the fans in terms of hearts and minds. And I mean, listen,
I was going to say, I think we should remember with Willow as well that the World Cup had an effect, and I think the World Cup had an effect on our season, even if slightly tangentially, with him being out for a month. So it's kind of it's an interesting one, isn't it? That disruption as well is just another thing on top of everything else that's gone wrong. I was going to point out as well, Charlie about 8 hours ago retweeted the early bird season ticket tweet from the club. So I wonder whether that's a hint that he's staying. But I do think it's a really good point that if the club nails down those 2 players, I think people will have a bit more faith to commit to season tickets.
Yeah. Well, Jason's just tweeted. God, Jason, come on, mate. So Jason says, I don't want to put a dampener on the club, but I've been reliably informed by someone at the club that a lot of Brown stuff will be hitting the fan quite soon. So watch this space. Well, I mean, look, you can't really put a bigger dampener on things, Jason, than to put that out there. But, you know, listen, at the end of the day, we can only go on what we know at the moment, right? And, you know, that is that, you know, we've got, I don't know, we've got who we believe to be a decent owner. I mean, we could all speculate on someone inside the club has said this, someone inside the club has said that. I mean, that's a pretty incendiary thing to say, Jason. I'm putting it out there because you put it in the public domain. But without any meat on the bones, I don't know. We can't really extend on that. There's so much that we could hang that argument on. So many hooks we've talked about tonight. You know, we're not happy about, you know, recruitment's not been great. You know, we've talked in recent weeks about some of the communications that have come out of the club. You know, we've had 2-week blackouts. There's been huge. I mean, here's a prime example. Talk about leaks. Huge amount of leaks. There's been miscommunications on whether promotion is the angle. You know, have we become? I mean, I listened with great interest to Terry on the Low Strangers this week, and the phrase that he came out with, where it seems like we've turned into a season-long exit trial. You know, it's like, oh my God, like that's not great. You don't want to be hearing stuff like that. But I think we could hang that point, Jason, that you make on any of these points, any and all of it. I think at the end of the day, like we deal with cataclysms as and how they happen, I guess. But look, I mean, look, we've touched on so many themes, like, and I'm just conscious of the time. Like, it's before we know it's going to be bloody midnight, and there's still some other points that we wanted to touch on. So I guess we sort of, I mean, listen, we've given everyone an open opportunity. I've literally read out every single tweet that's come in to the show so far. I think we've all, from a panel point of view, aired our points. I mean, is there anything that we're missing here, guys, before we move along? I think we've all got a good handle on where we think the season's gone wrong. I'm getting thumbs up from pretty much everyone. Righto. Well, listen, we'll move on. I mean, Jack, are you happy, Jack? Do you feel that you're your anguish has been sufficiently aired, or am I missing anything?
No, I think even over the week, it's kind of calmed down from that Rochdale game. Whereas, I feel like giving the youngsters a good run in towards the end of the season, or even maybe towards the end of last season, if you think about it, we had to win. What was it? All of the last 4 games we had to win.
Yeah.
We could. There still yet could be another end of last season in this season. You've just got to keep holding on the hope. But I feel like no matter what happens towards the end of this season, we'll probably eventually be better off next season, depending on who we keep and season tickets and stuff like that.
Jack, do you know what? I was asked for an opinion by the Adver about 2-3 weeks ago, and I said we're going to finish 9th and we're going to just miss out on the playoffs. I think with our players returning from injury and suspension, I think we're going to have enough in the squad that we're going to probably have a few surprise results in the mix. I think we're going to have a decent enough run in because I think we've got enough players playing for contracts, playing for their futures. I think we've still got players. So when Tyree Shea comes back from international duty, which we'll touch on, you got players like him that actually still got a point to prove. They've still got so much to offer. It's been a difficult first season for them, but they're just starting to come good under Jody's stewardship. So I do believe that we're going to have a decent run in between now and the end of the season, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get us up, is my gut feel.
I do agree on that part. I feel like we're going to have a decent run in, but especially now, obviously, Tyree Shea's gone off on international duty just as he was kind of starting to hit that good run of form. It's kind of a big issue with us. It's obviously the same happened with Johnny when he went off into the World Cup, hit a really good patch of form, and then has he really been the same player since he's come back from the World Cup? I wouldn't say so.
I mean, it's a perennial problem with us, isn't there? For every Johnny and for every Tyrese, I'll give you a Mas Luongo, I will give you a Yasser Kassim, I'll give you a Jojo Woolacott, players that come back from international duty and don't quite hit the heights. I guess we just have to keep our fingers crossed. One thing I will say is that, having spoken to Tyrese, person to person, he's absolutely, fired up and, wanting to deliver the goods for us between now and the end of the season. And listen, for me, he's one of the real bright spots of the last few weeks. Take Warsaw aside, I think he's probably been one of our more outstanding performers. So I think we'll be fine, mate, when he comes back from St Kitts and Nevis. I think he will be fine. I mean, on that, we'll tip our hat to you, Tyree. So it's his first senior call-up to St Kitts and Nevis. He's been capped at junior level for them. And, many congrats. Always nice to have an international player on the books. Always seems to happen when we could do with having all of our players around, right? So, but we congratulate him nonetheless. Fan engagement index. Now, how about this? He says, polishing his fingernails on his top. Football club. If I cast my net right the way back to the formulation of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, as the show then started to mushroom and we got on the club's radar. It was an interesting conversation because the club were very open with me back then about the fact that, look, there is this fan engagement index, and one of our key performance indicators, to quote some proper management bullshit bingo for you, one of our key performance indicators was to get the club right up the fan engagement index. And if there is one thing that you can undeniably salute the club for this year, it has been the club's willingness to reach out. And I'll tell you, the frustrating thing as somebody that hosts our show is the club have been so open in terms of working with us that the perennial allegation is that we are, I mean, Joe, this is a conversation you and I have a lot, that we're in the club's pockets or that somehow we're on the payroll. But it literally is just this, isn't it? That the club said to us right at the start of this whole piece, fan engagement index, we want to get right up that league table. We see you guys as a great way of doing it. You're pulling significant numbers for your show. You give people an opportunity to come on and have a voice and engage. You give us an opportunity to put people on your show to then engage with fans. So it's a marriage made in heaven. And it seems to be, I mean, we're just a cog in the overall wheel. The club they've been criticised a lot, haven't they, Joe, on some fronts, but they've done an awful lot right this year on comms too.
Yeah, I mean, if we were on the payroll, I feel a bit like a Wigan player. The check's not come through the post just yet. I've got a few months back up waiting.
But
yeah, no, mate, I completely agree with what you're saying.
To be fair, though, Joe, you do like a pie.
Yeah, well, that is true. That is true. The sort of the transparency and the engagement with fans has been really good this season. The only down spot, the media blackout. I mean, what was that about?
But that's what I mean.
Who's come up with that? Like, whose
that's-
idea was going? Yeah, we're in a really tough period. What we're going to do is we're going to fuck the fans off and just not talk to them or not post anything. Even it was up to the lead up to Charlie's return, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it promo for Charlie's return, and it's like, come on now, that's an own goal.
Yeah, we want to pack the county ground, but we're not going to talk to our fans. But like I said, listen, proof's in the pudding, right? So if we're going to criticise the club for things like that, you know, you got to kind of salute the club at the same time. To rise from 92nd to, what was it, 20th? I mean, that is some rise. That is absolutely phenomenal. So I think there does need to be. I mean, listen, sometimes I wonder whether or not we are guilty as supporters of not necessarily fully appreciating just how bad it must have been behind the scenes. That, you know, that I don't know, if you're going to give the club the benefit of the doubt, it must have been absolutely catastrophic behind the scenes that they're putting it back together, that you've still got enough talent that it will take you from, you know, 92nd to 20th in the space of 12 months. So you've still got the ability to do that. But there's still going to be imperfections, right? And the blackout, I like to think, if I'm going to give the club the benefit of the doubt, a blackout's a classic example of maybe someone that's made a decision there that is a naive, non-football related, decision maker, making a pretty bloody poor decision. At the same time, if that person's feeding into the overall media mix, they haven't done too bad a job, have they?
No, I agree.
But then do fans care, Joe? At the end of the day, do we really care? Really? Like, at the end of the day, it goes back to that point about finances, right? Do we really give a monkeys if we're in the top 20 of fan engagement index, if what we're watching on the pitch is pretty crummy? Like,
no, we don't. Yeah, you're right there. I think going back to the media blackout thing, like, we're so prevalent on social media. We gave it the big one of, you know, the transparency thing. We want to be at the top of the fan engagement index. And then the media blackout for me just ruined it. So it was just like, well, we're going against something that we're preaching every advisory board at the start of the season. And the only tweet we got, I think, was the admin tweeting like a Bugs Bunny gif as a reply to someone that was calling them out for the media blackout.
I was actually looking at when that the fan engagement thing came out, and our transparency was actually quite a low mark. And I actually thought that media blackout probably played a big part on that, because if we'd had a decent transparency mark, which was something that they said that was going to be big when Clem came in and whatnot, then we would have been a hell of a lot higher than 20th.
Yeah. Yeah, no, mate, you're right. I mean, again, listen, I'm not defending anybody here. I'm just trying to play a bit of devil's advocate. If you've got, you know, listen, if you've got a club that is, you know, on its way back, I wonder whether part of the trick is if it really is that bad behind the scenes, or has been, and they're still putting things back together. I mean, it's kind of counterproductive, isn't it? Because you don't want to kind of like show all your dirty linen in public, but at the same time, you know, by kind of not doing that, you've got fans just assuming that, you know, things are as good as behind the scenes as they were when Richie Wellens had his flight.
But the thing about that, though, Mark, as well as the week before, right, we just signed Charlie Austin. We've got a week in playing, and to just have a blackout before that. What was the logic behind that? You know, surely there's an argument there for advertising that and making so much money with shirt sales and whatnot, but to be quiet the week before he makes his debut, I just don't understand the logic.
Yeah, well, listen, mate, I think pretty much everyone in the stadium that, you know, keeps an eye on comms and actually cares about it would have thought exactly the same thing. Couple more tweets have rolled in. MST's tweeted again, says, to be honest, Hannah, I was surprised you bought a season ticket. I thought the club were giving you a free pass. How is fan engagement measured? So listen, in order for us to move around the stadium, we are given media passes that enables us to move from where we host the shows on the Saturday in the Legends Lounge. My season ticket's in the town end, so I need to be able to sort of ditch my gear. So I bring a laptop, got an iPad, obviously, various other bits and bobs in my bag. Need to be able to ditch that and get into the town end. That's the only reason why we've got passes. No, listen, we're not freeloaders. Like I would want to make sure that I'm paying my way, right? I think that's really important. Also, I think it's important for you guys as listeners to know that we are paying our way as well. If you want an indication of our independence, well, there it is right there. It's really important for me to have a season ticket. So in the case that if I ever felt, as a safeguard, if I ever felt that someone was going to turn around at me and say, well, there you go, we're withdrawing your media pass this month, I'll be like, well, yeah, fill your boots, pal. We'll do our show from the car in the car park, and I'll quite happily still go and take my seat in the town. It's not a problem. I think I speak for all of my my cohort when I say that, whether they're season ticket holders, whether they buy their tickets at the gate. There's nobody that's part of our show that freeloads and uses us as a free pass into the ground. Certainly not that I'm aware of, anyway. Well, listen, look, a couple of other bits and bobs just to wrap up on. I think we will save. We've got some Roch just in the interest of time, because time really is cracking on. We've got quite a lot to talk about in relation to Rochdale, but I think we'll keep our powder dry until Saturday. We've got a big change for Saturday's show, by the way. There's me talking about being in the Legends Lounge. Had quite a few complaints of people listening into us on Saturday saying that the acoustics have got progressively worse over the last couple of weeks. There is a reason for that. There have been people saying in the Legends Lounge that they want more volume on the TVs while they're watching football, Premier League football, before they then go out and watch the live football on the pitch at the county ground. So wherever we're sat, we're always within spitting distance of one of the ceiling speakers. So delightfully, the club have agreed to for us to be giving you our Saturday shows live from pitch side at the county ground moving forward. So from Saturday, when you hear us chatting, we will literally be there staring at the pitch directly in front of you. And we'll be running the shows from there, which should also make things a little bit easier in terms of people coming on, guests coming on the show, and being able to speak to us as well. Hopefully, fingers crossed, from the performance side. So we'll keep you. We will keep you plugged in on all those things in terms of what's happening with the show on Saturday. I am going to be back on the pitch on Saturday. Delighted to confirm. And my God, get yourself in the ground, because I have got some legends coming on the pitch with me. I'm not going to tell you who, but let's just say I have got Swindon Town royalty with me on Saturday. One of the things that you guys were well aware, there was a real mixed response to our appearance, my appearance, moreover, on week one. Week one was always going to be a bit of a pilot, so we did it across an hour. There were a number of things that we tried just to see how our fans were going to respond to it. It's always difficult because so much is dictated by the previous week's result, or the mood in the ground, or the timing. There's so many variables, and obviously such a broad church of football supporters, you can't please everybody. But that's always our intention, okay? So there's a few things that we tried that I really, really liked, and certainly you can see from the reaction the crowd really, really liked. One of the things that the club wasn't able to help me on in week one, which I've insisted on moving forward, is, let's just say, talking to wonderful Swindon Town legends and Swindon Town players. I'll say to you this: make sure you're in the ground at 2:30 on Saturday. You will not want to miss who I've got lined up for you on the pitch on Saturday. And I'm just going to tantalise you that way, but there will be 3 individuals joining me on the pitch, and I'm sure none of you guys will be disappointed. So yeah, come along Saturday, get into the ground. Our stuff will start about 2:30. Jay up in the box has got a brilliant playlist all lined up. We're going to be changing the playlist every week. You're not going to be disappointed. Does the royalty celebrate goals as an aeroplane? No, Jason, no. Unfortunately, Jan Arge Fjordhoff will not be joining the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge on Saturday. Anyway, keep your powder dry on that front. Good luck to Callum Knowles. Callum Knowles, club photographer and media assistant, is undertaking 15,000 sit-downs in the county ground. So Callum is going to sit on every single seat in the county ground on Sunday for charity, which is going to be quite some feat. So good luck, Callum. Best of luck with your endeavours. What am I missing, Joe? Have I missed something? I've got this nagging feeling that just before we wrap up the show, I'm missing something. Oh, sorry. Yes. So we're talking about pitch appearances. One thing I've got to say, unfortunately for Mansfield, irrespective of how you feel things go on Saturday, I was planned to be back for Mansfield, but I am not going to be on the pitch for Mansfield, unfortunately, due to pressing family matters. And we're in the process of making sure that I've got a substitute lined up for Mansfield, which will be following home game. So no conspiracy theories, please, about I've been canned or I've lost my voice or any other nonsense that got thrown at me after week one. I will, unfortunately, the club are well aware I've got to miss a week. But fingers crossed, you'll be pining for me to come back for a third attempt thereafter. Joe, sorry, I was about to say, have I missed anything?
I don't think so, mate. I think we've been through almost 3 hours worth of all of our content.
Yeah, I think so. It's been interesting. I mean, honestly, your calls, guys, like even now, like the tweets are still rolling in. XTC on the playlist, please. Yeah. Listen, that's what you're damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to music. And no, Jason, I've not signed for Crawley, but interesting point. But no, listen, I mean, the music thing is such an emotive topic. Like, we're kind of damned if we do, damned if we don't. I think the key thing is we want kind of, not just run of the mill, same old playlist playing every single week. And you want something with a little bit of, a little bit of oomph that gets us all smiling, gives us a bit of a lift, right? Not the same old tunes just on recycle. Everyone's got a really emotional attachment to XTC. They've got a special place in my heart. I'm not going to sit here and argue the pluses and minuses of XTC. They are local band. Everyone loves them. Fair play. You genuinely wouldn't want me literally on the decks. That's all I will say. That is all I will say. You wouldn't want my selection. But listen, so time is a wasting. Like I said, your core aspects of this show, we could just keep going and going and going and going and going. My notes went on like 2, 3, 4 sides of A4, and those were all in bullet point form. But I hope we've given everybody an opportunity to have a vent. It's really emotive stuff. If at times, our tones seem a little bit upbeat, where you personally feel really, really down about stuff at the moment, trust me, deep down, I'm kind of gutted with how this season's unfolded so far. Part of me still feels that there's still 30 points to play for, and I'm not going to just glibly refer to Bristol Rovers, but listen, I will glibly refer to the Swindon Town roller coaster. Our club just defies logic, left, right, and centre. Always has, always will. It's part of the charm, So let's just keep our fingers crossed. I reckon I've got about 300 quid's worth of season ticket value left this season across my family. I just refuse to turn around and travel 240 miles and walk through those turnstiles or get on the mic on the pitch or host a show from a sort of point of meh. We're meant to go to football to enjoy ourselves, right? So let's try and at least enjoy what we got left as best we can. Is what it is, right? Let's hope the boys surprise us from Saturday. Chris K, it's been an absolute treasure having you back, mate. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome, fella.
Lovely having you. Please don't be a stranger, mate. We'll get you back on soon.
Certainly won't.
I'll hold you to that. Joe, mate, as always, an absolute treat having you on as well, pal. Thanks so much for all your time.
Cheers, buddy. Always a pleasure.
Look after yourself. I'll catch up with you shortly. Chris P, all best wishes to you and family, mate. Thanks ever so much for taking time out to come on tonight.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
You beautiful man. And Jack, what a lovely debut, mate. Thank you ever so much for honouring your promise and coming on. It's been a real treat having you on, mate. How have you enjoyed yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good. Obviously, I've never been in this kind of situation, so it's kind of good to get off my anxiety and just get through it. But yeah, well, Jack, thank you for inviting me.
Jack, you tweeted me, can we use our contacts to make sure the fans are heard? Do you feel like the fans have been sufficiently heard tonight?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously everyone's got their input in, and yeah, so it's great.
All right, well, I'm assured by the club that the club do listen. All right, mate, that's the only promise that I can make you, Jack. And, hopefully your appearance on the show just goes to show, like, literally we are an open house, all right? We want you all on. there are people, unfortunately, there are people that I've had to block. There are people that I've had to mute because some of the criticism, some of the abuse that I've received or my family's received, I think has just gone a step too far over the last week or so. But, you know, listen, as long as we can keep it civil and you're not just like nibbling away at me to try and get some kind of weird rise, everyone's welcome on the show, right? So, yeah, listen, come on down. The water's lovely. We're an independent Swindon Town Twitter space on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. Such our views do not represent those of Swindon Town Football Club or Sir Tom Broadbent himself. It's been an absolute treat having you all on. Hopefully, look forward to seeing many of your smiling faces on Saturday. Look after yourselves. Have a successful end of your week. Come on, you Reds.